Honey, Chung Hao is my best male friend. He's sick, and I have to go take care of him. I might not be back tonight, so don't wait up for me. Midnight, in a hospital room. Li Ziheng stared at the message his wife, Jiang Wan, had sent him 5 hours ago via the messaging app, a bitter taste in his mouth. He and Jiang Wan had been married for 5 years, and today happened to be their 5th wedding anniversary. At Jiang Wan's request, he had booked a restaurant and invited all their friends to celebrate. But the group waited for a full 2 hours, and Jiang Wan never showed up. During that time, Li Ziheng called Jiang Wan several times, but no one answered. It wasn't until the dinner party ended, and Li Ziheng had forced himself to see his friends off, that Jiang Wan finally sent this message. Li Ziheng was furious, because this was the 4th time this month that Jiang Wan had stood him up. And each time, the reason was a man named Chung Hao. The first time, there was a problem with a project Chung Hao was in charge of, and she had to accompany him to explain it to the client. The second time, Chung Hao was heartbroken and got into a fight at a bar after drinking, ending up at the police station. As for the third time, it was because Chung Hao lost a game of truth or dare, so he called her for help, and the two even drank a ceremonial cross-cupped wine. And this time, it was because Chung Hao was sick. It seemed that whenever it came to anything related to Chung Hao, Jiang Wan was particularly attentive. Before, Li Ziheng didn't understand. But just tonight, he learned from Jiang Wan's best friend the true nature of her relationship with Chung Hao. Chung Hao, Jiang Wan's boyfriend during their university years. They dated for 4 years, but broke up after graduation. The reason was that Chung Hao chose to go abroad for further studies, and Jiang Wan refused. With no other choice, Chung Hao proposed breaking up. Since then, Chung Hao became the unattainable ideal in Jiang Wan's heart. And just a month after their breakup, Li Ziheng appeared and fell in love with Jiang Wan at first sight. He pursued Jiang Wan for 3 months, and ultimately, his efforts paid off, and he successfully won her heart. But what Jiang Wan didn't know was that Li Ziheng was not an ordinary person. His mother was a financial magnate, and when he was young, she had arranged a marriage for him. To be with Jiang Wan, he had a falling out with his mother. Since then, his mother had not contacted him again and cut off all his financial support. Li Ziheng did not regret this because in the 5 years of their marriage, he was very happy. Even though, because of Jiang Wan's willfulness, he was forced to quit his job and settle into the role of Jiang Wan's full-time driver and house husband. Even though his father-in-law thought he was a gold digger and looked down on him, often mocking him and even deliberately targeting him, making him feel embarrassed. But none of this mattered to Li Ziheng. To him, as long as Jiang Wan was happy, he was willing to give anything, to endure anything. Originally, the relationship between the two was still very harmonious. But just a month ago, Chung Hao returned to the country. When she heard this news, Jiang Wan even went to the airport to pick him up. That day, Jiang Wan drank a lot, and it was Li Ziheng who drove to pick her up. When they got home, Jiang Wan locked herself in her room and cried for a long time. That day was the first time, and the only time since Chung Hao's return, that Li Ziheng had seen Chung Hao. Chung Hao was sunny and handsome. Jiang Wan had said that Chung Hao was the campus heartthrob of their year at university, with many admirers and fangirls. Li Ziheng just smiled and didn't think much of it. After all, it had nothing to do with him. But who would have thought that the person he thought was irrelevant a month ago would be one of the culprits who turned their marriage into a misfortune? After the dinner party, Li Ziheng obtained Chung Hao's contact information through a friend. He thought about contacting Jiang Wan directly, but Jiang Wan's phone was turned off after she sent that message. When he called Chung Hao told him that Jiang Wan was taking a shower and that she would be spending the night at his place, so he shouldn't worry. Li Ziheng was furious. On the phone, he angrily denounced Chung Hao's behavior, calling him a homewrecker. But Chung Hao said that the one who is not loved is the third wheel. After saying that, he hung up the phone. Li Ziheng was devastated. He desperately wanted to find Jiang Wan, but he got into a car accident on the way. Fortunately, he only suffered minor sprains and bruises. But even so, he was still taken to the hospital. He had been under observation until now. Ding! Just as the doctor informed him that he was fine and could be discharged, Li Ziheng received a friend request from Chung Hao on the messaging app. After the friend request was accepted, Chung Hao immediately sent 3 photos of Jiang Wan. In the first photo, Jiang Wan had a dazed look, her eyes full of dependence. In the second photo, Jiang Wan was wearing a hotel bathrobe, holding a wine glass as if to make a toast. In the third photo, Jiang Wan was lying in bed, her eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Although she was covered with a blanket, her shoulder was exposed. After seeing the photos, Li Ziheng felt as if his heart was being torn apart. The pain was suffocating. His vision went dark, and he almost fell. His hands trembled as he tried to send a message, but but Chung Hao retracted all 3 photos. When Li Ziheng's message was sent, a red exclamation mark appeared in the chat box. At this moment, he didn't take a taxi, but walked in the rain all the way back to the house he shared with Jiang Wan, the home where they had spent 5 years together. He stood on the balcony, looking at the endless darkness outside, smoking one cigarette after another. In his mind, scenes from his childhood to the present kept looping. Those scenes included beauty, sweetness, childishness, excitement, happiness, as well as pain and despair. Why am I so humble? So pathetic? I wasn't like this before. When did I start losing myself? Start worrying about gains and losses? Start fearing loss? No, this isn't me. I can't go on like this anymore. At this moment, Li Ziheng seemed to have realized something. A glimmer of hope flashed in his dim eyes. He took a deep breath, turned around and went back to the room, grabbed a change of clothes, and headed straight for the bathroom. 10 minutes later, he returned to the living room and dialed his mother's phone number, which he had not contacted for 5 years. After the call connected, Li Ziheng gave a wry smile and spoke in an extremely hoarse voice. "Mom, you were right. I was too naive. I was wrong. I'm sorry." There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. 2 minutes later, his mother's gentle voice came through the receiver. "If you want to cry, just cry. Mom won't laugh at you. Mom." Hearing this, Li Ziheng couldn't hold back anymore. He raised his head, covered his face, and burst into tears. He cried very sadly, very desperately. During this time, his mother remained silent, just listening. It wasn't until Li Ziheng's crying gradually subsided that his mother's voice sounded again. "Ziheng, I know everything that's happened in the past 5 years, including the past month and everything that happened today. You've suffered a lot these past 5 years, but Mom won't pity you, nor will she comfort you, because you brought this upon yourself. As my son, I don't want you to be a piece of trash who gets bullied and doesn't dare to fight back. I don't accept your apology, but I can give you a chance to apologize with actions. The year you got married, I established a branch office in Yun City, and this branch office has been secretly supporting the Jiang family's business. In the past 5 years, I've lost a lot to support the Jiang family. As a businesswoman, I don't do business at a loss. So, I'm giving you 1 year to recover all the previous losses. This includes the grievances my precious son has suffered. Whether it's Jiang Wan or the Jiang family, I want them to pay the price. If you can do it, I'll still acknowledge you as my son. If you can't, then don't contact me again." His mother's voice was still calm, but from her words, Li Ziheng felt his mother's overwhelming anger. Li Ziheng took a deep breath and said slowly, "Mom, don't worry this time. I won't let you down again." This was her style, doing everything with swiftness and determination. After a good cry, and after resolving the conflict with his mother, Li Ziheng felt a lot better. The suppressed emotions seemed to have been greatly relieved. He looked out the window. Unknowingly, it was already dawn. When the darkness recedes, dawn will eventually come. Humility and humiliation have become a thing of the past. At this moment, Li Ziheng was reborn. Morning, 7:20 a.m. Jiang Wan returned. She was helped back by Chung Hao. Both of their clothes were somewhat disheveled, as if they hadn't sobered up yet. Jiang Wan, who was being supported, kept rubbing her temples. Jiang Wan didn't notice Li Ziheng sitting on the sofa. It was Chung Hao who noticed him first. When he noticed Li Ziheng's gaze on him, Chung Hao subconsciously released his hand from Jiang Wan's waist. He smiled naturally at Li Ziheng, a hint of mockery in his smile. Then, he leaned closer to Jiang Wan's ear and whispered, "Waner, look." Jiang Wan frowned slightly, her cold gaze falling on Li Ziheng. "You're up so early?" There was no trace of guilt, no trace of apology. Jiang Wan's eyes were calm. Before Li Ziheng could speak, she said again, "I have a bit of a headache. Make me some hangover soup." Before Li Ziheng could speak, Chung Hao suddenly said, "Waner, then you rest well. I'll head back first." With that, he turned to leave. But Jiang Wan reached out and grabbed his wrist. "You also drank a lot last night. Wait until you've had the hangover soup before you go. Is that really okay?" Chung Hao said this, but his steps that were about to leave the door stopped. He glanced at Li Ziheng, who was sitting on the sofa without saying a word, and smiled awkwardly. "Your husband doesn't seem to be in a good mood. If I stay, it might make him misunderstand." Hearing this, Jiang Wan turned to look at Li Ziheng again. Her expression became a little impatient, and her tone became a little stern. "Li Ziheng, are you deaf? I told you to make hangover soup. Can't you hear me?" Jiang Wan frowned. Li Ziheng's disobedience made her a little annoyed. You must know, the old Li Ziheng used to obey her every word. But today he was so ignorant, which made her lose face. Chung Hao, beside her, curled his lips slightly into an imperceptible smile. He stared at Li Ziheng, seemingly curious about how Li Ziheng would respond. Li Ziheng glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, "Don't you have hands?" Jiang Wan was stunned. Chung Hao was also stunned. Neither of them expected Li Ziheng to answer like this. As if doubting what she had heard, Jiang Wan couldn't help but ask, "What? What did you say? Are you deaf?" Li Ziheng picked up the cigarette case on the table, took out a cigarette, and lit it. After taking a deep drag, he slowly exhaled the smoke and said coldly, "I said, don't you have hands? Asking me to make hangover soup for you. What do you think you are? Are you even worthy?" Although he tried his best to suppress his inner emotions, the sudden increase in volume had already exposed his current anger. Jiang Wan was stunned for a moment. It seemed she hadn't recovered from Li Ziheng's attitude towards her. "Wanner, don't be angry. Your husband is just worried about you. That's why he spoke without considering your feelings. Don't sulk. Communication is the most important thing between a couple." Chung Hao gently patted Jiang Wan's shoulder and continued, "You two talk it out. I'll go first." After speaking, he kindly said to Li Ziheng, "Li Ziheng, right? Wanner always talks about how good you are. I don't know what's wrong with you today. But no matter how angry you are, you shouldn't say such disrespectful things. Wanner drank a lot last night. You should be taking good care of her right now." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Ziheng laughed. "You're so considerate. Why don't you take care of her for me? After all, which man doesn't like a married woman? Especially a married woman who is beautiful, has a good figure, and is successful in her career." As he spoke, Li Ziheng glanced at Jiang Wan, who still hadn't recovered. Jiang Wan was beautiful and had a good figure with curves in all the right places, very sexy. But at this moment, there was no love in Li Ziheng's eyes when he looked at Jiang Wan, only endless disgust. Chung Hao frowned, his tone filled with anger as he reprimanded, "Li Ziheng, what do you mean by that? You can doubt me, but how can you doubt Wanner? Do you think Wanner would do something to betray you?" Before Chung Hao could finish, Jiang Wan suddenly interrupted. "No need to explain." Jiang Wan gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with disappointment as she stared at Li Ziheng, her voice squeezed out from between her teeth. "A dirty mind sees dirt everywhere." After saying that, she pulled Chung Hao towards the guest room in front of Li Ziheng. "Your cold hasn't gotten better, and you didn't sleep all night. Stay here and sleep for now. We'll go to the company together at noon." As she spoke, Jiang Wan pushed open the door to the guest room. Chung Hao looked at Jiang Wan, then quickly turned and walked to Li Ziheng. He looked down at Li Ziheng, his tone filled with strong anger as he reprimanded, "Li Ziheng, what kind of man are you? Wanner works hard outside to build her career. It's one thing if you can't help, but to treat her like this. Without her working hard to earn money, do you think you could live such a good life? Do you know how many people are pursuing Wanner? But Wanner rejected them all for you. It's one thing if you don't appreciate it, but to treat her so badly? Now, I order you to immediately apologize to Wanner." At this moment, Chung Hao was like a person standing on the moral high ground, scolding Li Ziheng. Jiang Wan stood at the door of the guest room, watching quietly. Suddenly, her eyes turned red as if she had suffered a great grievance. Li Ziheng stood up expressionlessly. Then he clenched his fist and punched Chung Hao hard in the face. Bang! Chung Hao seemed to not have expected Li Ziheng to make a move. He couldn't dodge the punch. His body swayed, and he almost fell. "What are you barking about?" Li Ziheng shook his wrist, his tone cold. "A piece of trash who couldn't make it abroad and pretends to be an elite returnee, who gave you the courage to spout nonsense in front of me? Do you think I'm as easy to fool as this brainless woman? In front of me, you better put away your dirty tricks. Otherwise, I don't mind throwing you in the trash can. After all, trash only belongs in the trash can." Chung Hao's information had been sent to him right after his mother hung up the phone. Therefore, Li Ziheng knew everything about Chung Hao. A flicker of panic flashed in Chung Hao's eyes, and he said nothing more. Li Ziheng didn't look at Chung Hao again and walked straight towards the door. Just then, Jiang Wan quickly walked over and blocked Li Ziheng's path. Her eyes were red, and she glared at Li Ziheng with a complicated expression, gritting her teeth and asking, "Where are you going?" Li Ziheng chuckled. "Do you care where I'm going? You're not allowed to leave." Jiang Wan grabbed Li Ziheng's wrist, just as she had grabbed Chung Hao's wrist earlier. Li Ziheng seemed disgusted. Almost the moment Jiang Wan grabbed his wrist, he immediately shook her hand off. "Not allowed to leave? Do you want me to stay and join your threesome?" "Sorry, I can't accept such disgusting things." With that, Li Ziheng walked straight out the door, leaving Jiang Wan with a shocked expression. Just as he reached the elevator, he heard a loud bang behind him. It was the sound of the door being slammed shut. Li Ziheng laughed self-deprecatingly. As he walked out the door, He had imagined Jiang Wan chasing after him desperately. But Jiang Wan didn't. The hopeful heart was completely dead. Leaving the residential building, Li Ziheng took deep breaths of fresh air, as if to expel the stuffiness in his chest. Ring, ring. Just then his phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Li Ziheng pressed the answer button and put the phone to his ear, only to hear a clear and pleasant female voice from the phone. Hello, is this Mr. Li Ziheng? Yes. Who is this? Hearing Li Ziheng's answer, the woman's voice on the other end of the phone suddenly became a little excited. Young Master Ziheng. I'm Anya, the president of Yinhai International Trade. Headquarters asked me to contact you and handle your onboarding procedures. May I ask where you are? Young Master Ziheng? I'll come pick you up immediately. Add me on Feishin. I'll send you my location. My Feishin ID is my phone number. Okay, young Master Ziheng, please wait a moment. After hanging up the phone, he received a friend request on Feishin. Li Ziheng clicked to add, but his gaze was attracted by the other party's profile picture. The profile picture was of a beautiful woman standing next to a Ferrari sports car. The woman was wearing a red short dress, tall and slender with an hourglass figure. Long hair like a waterfall, very beautiful and elegant. She had a smile on her face, and the sunlight from the side gave a feeling of peaceful times. However, Li Ziheng wasn't attracted by her beauty, but was surprised by her appearance. Anya, the famous beauty president of Yun City, known for her outstanding looks, cold temperament, and strong workability, was hailed as goddess and by the men of Yun City. She was the dream lover of all the men in Yun City. She had countless suitors, but at the age of 26, she remained single and had never had any scandals. Because of this, people gossiped behind her back, saying she had an issue with her sexual orientation and didn't like men. It was said that even the richest man in Yun City was pursuing her, but she didn't give him any face and directly stated that he wasn't her type. Yinhai International Trade is actually my mother's subsidiary company. Li Ziheng was stunned for a moment, trying to digest this information. On second thought, he was relieved. With his mother as her backer, and Yin naturally had the confidence to reject the pursuit of the richest man in Yun City. After all, in front of his mother, a financial giant, the richest man in Yun City was just an ordinary person with a little money. After about 10 minutes, a red Ferrari sports car stopped in front of Li Ziheng. The car door opened, and Anya, dressed in a professional suit, quickly walked over. Young Master Ziheng? Anya smiled sweetly at Li Ziheng. There was no sense of distance in her tone, only intimacy. It felt like she had known Li Ziheng for a long time. This made Li Ziheng feel a little surprised. The two got into the car. On the way to Yinhai International Trade Company, Li Ziheng couldn't help but ask the question in his mind. President, do you know me? He was very direct. After asking, he turned to look at Anya's profile. Anya had a beautiful face shape, a standard oval face, willow leaf eyebrows, double eyelids, and big, bright eyes. When she looked at you, her eyes seemed to speak, very lively. Ahem. Anya coughed dryly, seeming to have something to say, but hesitated. Li Ziheng said calmly, just say it, I don't mind. Hearing this, Anya hesitated for a moment, then dropped a bombshell. Actually, I've seen young Master Ziheng no less than 10 times. When? How come I don't remember meeting President In? Li Ziheng became even more puzzled. Anya chuckled softly and raised her hand to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Young Master Ziheng, please don't keep calling me President In. I'm your subordinate. You can call me Anya, or even Little Ya. As for when we've met, there have been too many times, I can't even remember them all. But every time I saw young Master Ziheng, the young madam was present. The most memorable time was when the young madam got drunk at a reception, and someone tried to take advantage of her. Young Master Ziheng beat up that real estate tycoon. Anya's words plunged Li Ziheng into a memory. It was last summer. In order to gain more connections and channels, Jiang Wan attended a reception. Because of her outstanding looks and figure, she was plied with drinks by a group of executives under various pretexts. Jiang Wan wasn't a good drinker, and she got drunk after a few glasses of wine. Her secretary, seeing that things weren't looking good, called Li Ziheng. At that time, Li Ziheng was still running a high fever. The reason for his fever was that Jiang Wan had said she wanted to eat barbecue from a night market stall by the river. Li Ziheng went out without hesitation, but on his way back, it suddenly started to rain heavily. By the time he got home, he was soaked to the bone. Because of this, he developed a high fever the next day. But even so, after receiving the secretary's call, he still forced himself to go to the reception. When he arrived, Jiang Wan was already very drunk, leaning on a sofa in the rest area, completely out of it. A malicious executive quietly approached, wanting to take liberties with Jiang Wan, but Li Ziheng stopped him and punched the man. However, the other party called his bodyguards, who beat Li Ziheng severely, leaving him with a bloody head. That day at the reception, Li Ziheng gritted his teeth, endured the pain, and carried Jiang Wan away amidst the pointing and whispering of countless people around him. Afterward, when Jiang Wan sobered up and learned what Li Ziheng had done, not only was she not grateful, she also scolded him severely. In her words, Li Ziheng had made her lose face in the circle. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that the reception was hosted by Yunhai International Trade. Anya paused for a moment, then added, "At that time, I didn't know your identity, young master, but out of curiosity, I had you investigated. To be honest, I envy the young madam. If there could be a man in this world who treated me like young master treats the young madam, how happy would that be?" Speaking of this, a bitter smile flashed across Anya's lips. She didn't believe that there were perfect men in this world before, but after investigating Li Ziheng, she believed it. But she was also a little sad. The sad part was that the good man was someone else's husband, not hers. Adjusting her emotions, Anya smiled and continued. "Initially, I thought the headquarters asked me to take care of the young madam's company because she had a special relationship with them, but I didn't expect it was because of you, young master." She didn't say the rest, because after investigating, she became curious and began to pay attention to Li Ziheng. She knew about Li Ziheng and Jiang Wan's 5 years from dating to marriage. Li Ziheng was not a local, but he had savings of 3 million. When he was dating Jiang Wan, the Jiang family's working capital ran into problems, and they urgently needed 3 million in funding. For the 3 million in Li Ziheng's bank account, the Jiang family readily accepted him. Later, after a while, Li Ziheng went all in and used the 3 million as a bride price to marry Jiang Wan. However, this news was deliberately suppressed by the Jiang family. The Jiang family's company was only worth a little over 10 million at that time, which, to Anya, was just a tiny, insignificant company. But with the 3 million bride price given by Li Ziheng, the Jiang family successfully weathered the crisis and even expanded considerably. Just after Li Ziheng and Jiang Wan got married, Anya received a message from the headquarters, asking her to secretly support the Jiang family's company, which she had been doing until now. Now, the Jiang Corporation, because of Yunhai's secret assistance, had increased its market value 100-fold, reaching 1 billion. "Wife," Li Ziheng laughed self-deprecatingly and said softly, "She won't be for long." Hearing this, a flash of surprise appeared in Anya's beautiful eyes. She tentatively asked, "Young Master Ziheng, are you having a disagreement with the young madam?" "It's not really a disagreement. It's just that I've given in too much, I'm tired, and I don't want to keep doing it anymore." Li Ziheng smiled, but there was an unhidden bitterness in his smile. Hearing this, Anya sighed softly and said sincerely, "Young master is a good man. It's the young madam who is too willful and doesn't know how to cherish what she has. She will definitely regret it in the future." "Definitely. You don't need to comfort me, I'm fine. By the way, can you help me draft a divorce agreement?" "Of course. I just need to know what young master wants." The car entered an intersection, and because it was a red light, Anya stopped the car. Li Ziheng thought for a moment. "No other requests. Just the divorce." Li Ziheng didn't care about Jiang Wan's assets, because when he married Jiang Wan, his parents-in-law, on the grounds that Li Ziheng must give their daughter a sense of security, transferred all of Jiang Wan's assets to their names under a reasonable guise. In their words, as long as they did this, even if Li Ziheng changed his mind and divorced in the future, their daughter would not be without security and a way out for the rest of her life. Li Ziheng readily accepted his parents-in-law's proposal because he never thought he would change his mind, let alone divorce Jiang Wan. However, fantasy is beautiful, but reality is cruel. He didn't want to continue. He wanted to divorce Jiang Wan and end this unhappy marriage. "That's simple. I can get it done today." Anya nodded. The car fell silent. When the light turned green, Anya pressed the accelerator and suddenly asked softly, "Young Master Ziheng, perhaps you don't know, but Jiang Corporation has never been the most suitable partner for our company. The reason I cooperated with Jiang Corporation was because of orders from above. If young master really divorces the young madam, can the cooperation be terminated? After all, cooperating with Jiang Corporation is actually a disguised loss for us. Also, the actual annual salary of Jiang Corporation's chief pharmaceutical R&D engineer is 5 million, but Jiang Corporation only pays her 500,000 a year. The remaining 5 million is paid by our company. If possible, I would like to have that R&D engineer back. After all, the value she can create is too great, and our company needs her." Li Ziheng did not respond. He turned his head to look out the window. Perhaps it was because he had given up and was gradually relaxing after deciding to end this painful marriage completely. Or maybe it was because he hadn't slept all night last night. Li Ziheng fell asleep without realizing it. He slept soundly this time, without dreams. In the past month, he had been having dreams almost every night, and Jiang Wan was in every one of them. Each dream was depressing, painful, and suffocating. But today, when he decided to leave Jiang Wan, the nightmare seemed to disappear as well. When he woke up, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. Li Ziheng opened his eyes and found that he was still in the passenger seat of the Ferrari, but the seat had been reclined. He was covered with a small black suit jacket, and the temperature in the car was just right, not too cold, not too hot, very comfortable. Turning his head, he saw Anya holding a laptop, gently tapping the keyboard, seeming to be focused on work. Li Ziheng adjusted his seat. Hearing the movement, Anya turned to look. Her eyes lit up, and she turned the laptop screen towards Li Ziheng. "Young Master Ziheng, you're awake. This is the divorce agreement I drafted. Take a look and see if there's anything that needs to be changed." Li Ziheng glanced over it and was about to speak when he suddenly noticed that the phone screen on the armrest to the left of the seat suddenly lit up. That phone seemed to be his. But Li Ziheng remembered very clearly that he hadn't turned on silent mode. On the phone screen, a call reminder flashed with the contact name wife. Anya saw it too, and she thoughtfully got out of the car. Li Ziheng picked up the phone and pressed the answer button. "Li Ziheng, what you did this morning was too much. If you want me to forgive you, then you need to come to the company right now and sincerely apologize to Cheng Hao." Jiang Wan's voice, full of complaint and blame, came from the phone's receiver. Li Ziheng's mood had improved a lot, but when he heard Jiang Wan's words, his heart ached again. At this moment, his suppressed emotions completely erupted, and Li Ziheng laughed in extreme anger. "Apologize? Are you sure you want me to apologize?" "Of course. You did something wrong, and wrong, Cheng Hao. Shouldn't you apologize?" Jiang Wan said righteously. It seemed that she heard that Li Ziheng's tone was not quite right, and her voice suddenly softened a lot, as if coaxing a child, or as if acting coquettishly. She spoke again. "Husband, be good, okay? As long as you apologize, I'll agree to anything you say." In the past, every time Jiang Wan made a mistake and made Li Ziheng angry, she would act like this. And every time, Li Ziheng would forgive her. Even if Jiang Wan did something very excessive, he would still choose to forgive her because he was soft-hearted. Li Ziheng said sarcastically. "Really, anything?" "Yes, anything," Jiang Wan answered very crisply, even without hesitation. Li Ziheng, still somewhat unwilling to give up, asked, "Then what if I said I wanted you to fire Cheng Hao and never see him again?" "That's not possible. Pick something else. Anything but that. I'll agree to anything else." Jiang Wan's answer was still crisp, still without hesitation. But because of her lack of hesitation, Li Ziheng's last glimmer of hope was completely shattered. "Okay, remember what you said. Anything but that. You'll agree to anything." Li Ziheng hung up the phone. He didn't want to hear Jiang Wan's voice anymore. Anya opened the car door and got in. Just now, outside the car, although she couldn't hear what Li Ziheng and Jiang Wan said, judging from Li Ziheng's face, she knew that he was in a very bad mood right now. She was thinking about how to comfort a man who was about to get divorced when she heard Li Ziheng suddenly say, "Print out the divorce agreement first, and then take me to the Jiang Corporation." 15 minutes later, Anya dropped Li Ziheng off downstairs at the Jiang Corporation building. Jiang Corporation was located in a business district in the third ring of Yun City. It mainly engaged in pharmaceutical research and development and sales, and had opened up overseas channels this year, making its annual profits extremely considerable. Of course, a large part of the reason for its smooth operation was the covert support of his mother. Otherwise, with Jiang Corporation's limited capabilities, let alone opening up overseas channels, even the research and development of new drugs would be a problem. A month ago, Li Ziheng frequently visited Jiang Corporation's office building, so the front desk and most of the company's employees recognized him. Li Ziheng went straight to Jiang Wan's general manager's office. Before he even knocked, Li Ziheng heard Cheng Hao's voice coming from the office, mixed with Jiang Wan's giggles. "Knock, knock, knock." Li Ziheng didn't say anything, just clutched the divorce agreement in his hand and knocked on the door with a blank expression. Then he pushed the door open and entered. As soon as he entered, he saw Jiang Wan sitting in her office chair, supporting her chin with her left hand, playing with a pen in her right hand, and looking at Cheng Hao with a smile. There was a light in her eyes when she looked at Cheng Hao, the kind of look that only appears when one is in love with someone, a look that Li Ziheng had never seen in the 5 years he had been with Jiang Wan. Cheng Hao sat on the sofa in the office with his legs crossed handsomely, talking about something with a confident smile. When they saw Li Ziheng push the door open, their expressions changed. Their smiles disappeared, replaced by an inexplicable sense of guilt and awkwardness. Cheng Hao uncrossed his legs, took out his phone with feigned composure, and played with it with his head down. Jiang Wan coughed lightly, sat up straight, and said seriously, "Honey, you're here?" The light in her eyes also disappeared when she looked at Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng's heart twitched in pain. He smiled, glanced at Cheng Hao, and said, "Sorry, did I interrupt you too?" Cheng Hao perked up his ears, seemingly playing with his phone with his head down. But in reality, the screen of his phone hadn't changed at all. "Honey, what are you talking about?" Cheng Hao had some questions about work, so he came to ask me. Jiang Wan's eyes darted around as she explained somewhat impatiently. Li Ziheng and Jiang Wan had been married for 5 years, and he was particularly familiar with Jiang Wan's small movements and details. Whenever Jiang Wan lied, her eyes would become evasive, and she wouldn't dare to look Li Ziheng in the eye. Li Ziheng didn't expose her, but asked indifferently, "In our phone call earlier, you promised me that as long as I apologized to Cheng Hao, you would agree to anything I asked. Does that still hold true?" "Of course." Jiang Wan's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she said happily, "You were in the wrong in this matter. Cheng Hao and I are innocent, and you misunderstood him and hit him. Shouldn't you apologize? Also, there's something you might not know. Cheng Hao is very capable, and he's the head of the sales department that I worked hard to recruit. The new drug that the company developed earlier was unable to open up overseas channels, but thanks to Cheng Hao's use of his connections, he managed to do it. If it weren't for Cheng Hao, our company might not have been able to enter the overseas market for another 10 years. But now it's different. Not only have we occupied a part of the domestic market, but we've also opened up overseas channels. The future is promising." When talking about Cheng Hao's abilities, Jiang Wan's eyes lit up, as if she were proud of Cheng Hao. "So, both professionally and personally, you should apologize to Cheng Hao, shouldn't you?" After saying that, Jiang Wan stood up and walked to Li Ziheng, trying to take his hand. But Li Ziheng subtly avoided it. Jiang Wan wasn't angry about this. She just thought that Li Ziheng was still being temperamental. She didn't care, thinking that she would just comfort and coax Li Ziheng when they got back. After all, in her impression, Li Ziheng had always been a man with a good temper and was easy to coax. Jiang Wan urged, "Honey, hurry up and apologize to Cheng Hao. Otherwise, he might resign and leave the company. If he leaves, the company's losses will be huge." Li Ziheng took a deep look at Jiang Wan, smiled self-deprecatingly, and nodded. "Okay, I apologize." "I'm sorry." Li Ziheng clenched his fists, the words, "I'm sorry," seeming to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Cheng Hao raised his head with a confused expression. He first looked at Jiang Wan, then at Li Ziheng, and said with a smile, "Were you talking to me?" "Sorry, I was playing with my phone just now and didn't notice." Crack. Li Ziheng's fists were tightly clenched, and his knuckles made a crisp cracking sound. Jiang Wan's expression changed, and she said coquettishly, "Cheng Hao, Ziheng just apologized to you. Whether you heard it or not, I heard it. Let's just drop this matter. You're not allowed to bring it up again. Do you hear me?" All right, I heard you. Don't be so fierce, it's scary. People who don't know better would think you're going to eat me." Cheng Hao pretended to be scared and raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. When he said the word eat, he obviously emphasized it, and at the same time, the corner of his eye glanced over at Li Ziheng. He was provoking Li Ziheng in front of Jiang Wan. Li Ziheng naturally understood, but Jiang Wan seemed unaware. Jiang Wan couldn't help but laugh, and gave Cheng Hao a hard glare. This atmosphere made Li Ziheng feel like his heart was being cut by a knife. He took a deep breath, turned to Jiang Wan, and said, "I've done what I promised you. Now it's your turn." Seeing Li Ziheng's serious expression, Jiang Wan frowned slightly. She smiled wryly, feeling a bit speechless and helpless. All right, I'm scared of you. Tell me, what do you want? Just say it, and I'll agree to it." Hearing this, Cheng Hao also looked at Li Ziheng with some curiosity, seemingly very curious about what request Li Ziheng would make. "Okay." Li Ziheng nodded and handed the divorce agreement in his hand to Jiang Wan. Jiang Wan was a little puzzled, but she still reached out and took it. When she saw the words divorce agreement, the expression on Jiang Wan's face instantly froze. Her hand holding the divorce agreement was a little stiff, and Jiang Wan looked at Li Ziheng with an incredulous look. You want to divorce me?" Jiang Wan's voice trembled a little, and she stared at Li Ziheng's eyes as if trying to find something in them. But to her disappointment, Li Ziheng's eyes were very calm. So calm that there was no emotional fluctuation, as if divorce was not such an important thing to him. Thump! The divorce agreement in her hand fell to the ground, and Jiang Wan's eyes suddenly turned red. Her chest felt like it was stuffed with cotton, making it difficult for Jiang Wan to breathe. She bit her lip lightly and asked uncertainly, "Li Ziheng, do you really want to divorce me?" Li Ziheng nodded. Yes, you promised me that as long as I apologized, you would agree to anything. Now, I want you to sign and then go with me to the Civil Affairs Bureau next Monday to get the divorce certificate. Hearing Li Ziheng's confirmation, Jiang Wan's face instantly turned pale. She subconsciously took 2 steps back, seemingly unable to accept the fact that Li Ziheng really wanted to divorce her. The atmosphere in the office became somewhat stifling. After a brief, deathly silence, Jiang Wan, with reddened eyes, stared at Li Ziheng and asked, "Can you tell me why you want to divorce me?" "Because I don't love you anymore." Li Ziheng's tone was calm, as if he were talking about something completely normal. "Since there's no love, then there's no need to continue living together, right?" Hearing this, Jiang Wan laughed. She clenched her fists tightly, her gaze towards Li Ziheng filled with anger. She said coldly, "Li Ziheng, have you forgotten that you were the one who pursued me? You were the one who proposed to me, asked me to marry you? We've been married for 5 years. I'm your wife, and now you're telling me you don't love me anymore. Li Ziheng, what do you take me for? What do you take our 5 years of marriage for? Do you have any respect for me? Any respect for our 5 years of feelings?" Jiang Wan gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with resentment and grievance. Li Ziheng looked at Jiang Wan and smiled gently. "These 5 years, I haven't wronged you. Until yesterday, I still loved you and considered you my wife. But Jiang Wan, what did you take me for? What did you take our 5 years of feelings for?" As he spoke, Li Ziheng pointed to Cheng Hao, who was standing nearby, and said with a smile, "Tell me, who is he? What is your relationship with him?" Jiang Wan's eyes flickered, and she explained somewhat guiltily, He's the head of our company's sales department. We only have a superior-subordinate relationship. So you're saying that your relationship is purely that of a leader and an employee?" Li Ziheng smiled mockingly. Jiang Wan was about to nod, but Li Ziheng continued. "But because of this relationship, you stood me up 4 times this month? Even yesterday, on our 5th wedding anniversary, you could abandon me for him? The first time, there was a problem with a business deal, and you, as the general manager, accompanied him to the clients to solve the problem. I can understand that. The second time, he broke up with his girlfriend. He needed you, his superior, to comfort him. The third time, he lost a game of truth or dare, and you, the general manager, lowered yourself to help him out? And you even drank a cross-cup toast with him? Do I need to explain to you what a cross-cup toast means? The 4th time, which was yesterday, I invited all our friends as you requested, but you didn't even show up because he was sick?" At this point, Li Ziheng felt a sharp pain in his heart. He clutched his chest, his expression filled with hurt. "Jiang Wan, oh Jiang Wan, tell me, what role are you playing? Are you a love guru or a confidant?" The anger and grievance he had been suppressing finally overwhelmed him. Li Ziheng roared, "He's sick, so you go take care of him. Are you a doctor? When you were fucking sick, I was the one taking care of you. When I was sick, did you ever take care of me? Ignoring your husband and a bunch of friends to take care of a subordinate in your own company. Jiang Wan, do you think you're very smart? Or do you think I, Li Ziheng, am an idiot?" Faced with Li Ziheng's continuous questioning, Jiang Wan simply pursed her lips, her eyes showing a complex mix of emotions. "I can explain all of these. There's no need. I have no interest in your so-called explanations. I don't want a woman who has already mentally cheated on me. I think it's dirty." Jiang Wan was stunned, seemingly unable to accept that Li Ziheng would actually call her dirty. Li Ziheng's attitude was resolute. He bent down and picked up the divorce agreement from the floor. He handed the divorce agreement to Jiang Wan. "Sign it. Let's part amicably. Don't make a scene and embarrass both of us." "Li Ziheng, do you have to push me like this?" Seeing Li Ziheng's insistence on divorce, Jiang Wan also became angry. Especially Li Ziheng's words about her being dirty, which hurt her deeply. Li Ziheng said with a cold face, "You said it yourself. As long as I apologized, you would agree to anything. Of course, firing him doesn't count." Jiang Wan gritted her teeth and glared at Li Ziheng. "Li Ziheng, I advise you to think clearly. If you divorce me, I won't give you a single penny." Li Ziheng smiled. "Do you think I was with you for money?" "Jiang Wan, don't forget how much money was in my account before I married you." Jiang Wan was speechless. She seemed to have forgotten that when Li Ziheng wanted to be with her, he directly gave her parents 3 million yuan from his bank account as a bride price. Li Ziheng didn't want to dwell on the past. He said coldly, "Take a good look at this divorce agreement. After the divorce, I won't take a single penny. Now, are you satisfied? Can you sign it?" Li Ziheng's words and his attitude made Jiang Wan feel embarrassed, especially in front of Cheng Hao. Seeing her usually gentle husband being so aggressive, Jiang Wan's temper flared up. She grabbed the divorce agreement and quickly signed her name on it. Don't you regret it? Throwing the divorce agreement at Li Ziheng, Jiang Wan kindly reminded him, Li Ziheng, let me tell you, without you Jiang Wan, will only live better and stand higher. And you, after leaving me, you will have nothing. Li Ziheng picked up the divorce agreement with a calm expression and said indifferently, That's my business, you don't need to worry about it. Seeing Li Ziheng's continued indifference, Jiang Wan grabbed the coffee cup on the table and smashed it on the floor at Li Ziheng's feet, shouting, Get out. Bang! The coffee cup shattered into pieces. Jiang Wan's chest heaved violently, and her pretty face was flushed with anger. Li Ziheng turned and left the office. After Li Ziheng left, Cheng Hao immediately approached her and consoled her softly. Wanner, don't be angry. It's not worth it to get upset over a man whose heart has changed. By the way, Jiang Wan tried to calm herself down, turned to Cheng Hao, and smiled gently. Cheng Hao, thank you. Since you came, the company's performance has been improving rapidly. I've already told my dad about this. When the end of the year comes, you'll get your full commission. In addition, I will apply for some extra bonuses for you. Cheng Hao waved his hand and smiled casually. Wanna, I'm not doing this for money, but simply to help you. These past few years, although I haven't been in the country, I've heard about what's been going on with you from friends. These 5 years, you've worked hard. From now on, I will help you. I won't let you bear such a heavy burden alone anymore. Seeing Cheng Hao's passionate gaze, Jiang Wan's heart trembled, but she didn't respond. Averting her gaze, Jiang Wan picked up a document on the table and began to flip through it. But her heart just couldn't calm down. Her mind kept replaying the moments she had shared with Li Ziheng over the past 5 years. How? Could he bear to divorce me? Knock, knock, knock. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Jiang Wan's heart skipped a beat with joy. She thought Li Ziheng had regretted it and was coming back to apologize. But when she saw that it was the head of the business department who pushed the door open, a look of disappointment clearly flashed across Jiang Wan's face. The business manager's face was grim. General Manager, Yunhai International Trading Company has canceled their cooperation with our company. This means that our overseas channels are cut off. What? Hearing this news, Jiang Wan was shocked. Yunhai International Trading Company was the largest partner of the Jiang family. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that 60% of the Jiang family's income came from Yunhai International Trading. How could this happen? What did the person in charge at Yunhai say? Why did they cancel the cooperation? Was there a problem with the cooperation? Jiang Wan was panicked. Yunhai could do without the Jiang family, but the Jiang family could not do without Yunhai. The business manager replied. The explanation given by the other party is that the Jiang family does not have the qualifications to cooperate with Yunhai. The reason why they cooperated in the past was because of a certain person, but now that person has nothing to do with the Jiang family. How could this be? Jiang Wan was dumbfounded. That person? Who was that person? She had just signed the divorce agreement with Li Ziheng, and Yunhai canceled the cooperation. Could it be that the person Yunhai was referring to was Li Ziheng? This idea, once it emerged, was immediately denied by Jiang Wan. No, that's impossible. Li Ziheng and Yunhai have no connection. How could Yunhai cancel the cooperation because Li Ziheng and I got divorced? Thinking this way, Jiang Wan couldn't help but guess. Guessing who the person that Yunhai valued so much was. At this moment, the manager of the personnel department also came over. General Manager, something bad has happened. The chief engineer of the Pharmaceutical Research and Development Department has submitted a resignation letter. The personnel manager explained anxiously. There are still some defects in the new drug of our company, and the in-depth research and optimization project is only halfway through. If she leaves, the in-depth research and optimization project will not be able to continue. Two bad news came one after another, and Jiang Wan was completely stunned. Since she joined the Jiang Group and assumed the position of general manager, everything has been smooth sailing. Today's situation is the first time. Her head was blank. For a moment, she was a little at a loss. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Cheng Hao still sitting on the sofa in her office. Jiang Wan's eyes lit up, and she asked in a voice full of expectation. Cheng Hao, do you have any suggestions? You have such a wide network and so many connections. You must have a way to help me, right? When Cheng Hao heard the two news, he was also shocked and couldn't believe it. Without Yunhai's cooperation, Jiang Group would at most lose a large part of its revenue. But if the powerful pharmaceutical research and development engineer were gone, Jiang Group would lose its core competitiveness in the pharmaceutical industry. It is no different from a fool's dream for a company that has lost its core competitiveness to develop. But in the face of Jiang Wan's help-seeking and expectant eyes, Cheng Hao dared not say that he had no way. To this end, Cheng Hao pretended to be calm and frowned deeply. Warner, don't worry. These two things came too suddenly. I need to digest them well, but don't worry. I will definitely help you find a way. Chung Hao said this, but he thought to himself, I just said that I would help you find a way, but I didn't guarantee that I could help you solve the problem. If it really can't be solved by then, you can't blame me. Well, I believe in your ability. After all, you have such a wide network. You can definitely find a partner to replace Yanhai. Jiang Wan's nervous mood calmed down a little. As for the pharmaceutical research and development engineer who was about to resign, she decided to meet her in person and have a good talk. Resignation is nothing more than dissatisfaction with salary and benefits or other reasons. As long as the other party puts it forward, she can agree and solve it. Thinking this way, Jiang Wan gradually calmed down. After sending the two department managers out, Jiang Wan immediately went to the chief engineer of the RD department who was about to resign and asked her to meet at the coffee shop downstairs. Coffee shop? By the window. Jiang Wan looked at the woman sitting opposite her, who was in her early 30s with short, capable hair and glasses, and smiled. Sister Sue, I heard that you submitted your resignation letter this afternoon. May I ask, is your resignation due to dissatisfaction with our company's treatment, or for other reasons? Sister Sue's full name is Sue E., a graduate student of a foreign medical university who has won many awards and scholarships during her studies abroad. After graduating from university, she resolutely returned to China. After that, she submitted her resume to the Jiang Group. It has been 5 years since then. It can be said that the Jiang Group is the first company that Sister Sue joined, and she is a veteran and a hero of the Jiang Group. In Jiang Wan's view, Sister Sue has been in the Jiang Group for 5 years, and more or less she has developed some feelings for the Jiang Group. Leaving aside the reason for resignation, as long as she, Jiang Wan, sincerely persuades her, plays the emotional card, and increases the salary and benefits, Sister Sue should choose to stay. General Manager Jiang, I know your purpose for asking me out, but I can tell you clearly that my resignation is a well-thought-out decision. Sister Sue picked up the coffee, took a sip, and had a confident smile on her face. This answer directly made Jiang Wan's heart half cold, but she still asked persistently, Can you tell me the specific reason? Sister Sue smiled. General Manager Jiang, are you asking me this question as the general manager of the company, or as an ordinary friend? Is there a difference? Jiang Wan was puzzled. Of course. Sister Sue put down the coffee cup and stared at Jiang Wan calmly. If you ask as the general manager of the previous company, I will tell you that I have no comment. But if you ask as an ordinary friend, I will tell you that I never belonged to the Jiang Group from the beginning. As for why I entered the Jiang Group, you should ask the most important person around you. Sister Sue's words made Jiang Wan confused. She entered the Jiang Group but did not belong to the Jiang Group. The answer to this question should be asked to the most important person around her. Chung Hao. Did Sister Sue come to the Jiang Group because of Chung Hao? But if so, why did she resign? Could it be that Chung Hao had a conflict with her? Thinking of this, Jiang Wan decided to have a good talk with Chung Hao later and ask him what he did to Sister Sue that led to her resignation. Miss Jiang, I have to report to my new company later, so I won't stay any longer. As a return gift for your invitation to coffee, I can remind you to cherish the people in front of you, and don't wait until you lose them to regret it. That's all I have to say, Miss Jiang. Goodbye. After Sister Sue finished speaking, she picked up her bag and left. During the whole process, Sister Sue only stayed for less than 5 minutes. Jiang Wan is not stupid. She knows that Sister Sue specially took the time to meet her. It's just that she doesn't understand. She didn't understand the relationship between Sister Sue and Chung Hao. She didn't understand why Sister Sue reminded herself to cherish Chung Hao. Is Chung Hao going to leave her? Impossible. He clearly said today that he would always help her. How could he suddenly choose to leave her for no reason? With full of doubts and incomprehension, Jiang Wan dialed Chung Hao's phone. Chung Hao, I'm at the coffee shop downstairs. I want to talk to you about Sister Sue's resignation. Warner, I'm sorry. Something happened at home. I may have to ask for leave to go home. If you have anything to say, let's talk about it after I come back, okay? So, urgent? When are you going back? I'll drive you. No, I'm already on my way to the airport. You don't have to worry about me. I can take care of myself. That's it, my mother called. I'm hanging up. Beep, beep, beep. The phone was hung up. Jiang Wan's mood also became depressed. She sat alone in the coffee shop for a while, then got up and drove home. As soon as she got home, she heard a rustling sound coming from the bedroom. Jiang Wan curiously opened the bedroom door and saw Li Ziheng squatting on the ground, putting his folded clothes neatly into the suitcase one by one. Seeing Li Ziheng, Jiang Wan, who was already depressed, became even more upset. She put on a straight face and asked in a cold tone, Where are you going so late? We are already divorced. It's not appropriate to live together anymore. I'll move out tonight. Li Ziheng continued to be busy with his own affairs without looking back. Hearing this, Jiangwan became even more angry. Such a big thing happened to the company, and it's fine that her nominal husband couldn't help, but he still messed with her mood. First he wanted a divorce, and now he's running away from home. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Jiangwan simply didn't stop him and said coldly, "Okay, then hurry up and pack your things and get out of my house. By the way, remember to leave the keys when you leave. I don't want irrelevant people to come into my house." After saying that, Jiangwan turned and walked out of the room. Bang! The door was closed heavily, leaving Li Ziheng alone, squatting on the ground packing his suitcase. Li Ziheng smiled bitterly and continued to pack his things. Because there was a lot to pack, it took nearly half an hour to finish. Dragging a heavy suitcase, Li Ziheng walked out of the room. Just as he stepped out, he saw Jiangwan sitting in the living room, drinking alone. Hearing the noise behind her, Jiangwan turned her head to look, then turned back again. Her cheeks were flushed, obviously from drinking quite a bit. "The keys are here. Take care." Placing the keys on the coffee table in the living room, Li Ziheng didn't look back as he dragged his suitcase, ready to leave. Cough, cough, cough. Just as Li Ziheng reached out to grab the doorknob, Jiangwan's violent coughing came from behind. Li Ziheng paused, instinctively wanted to turn around to check on Jiangwan, but he resisted. Click! The doorknob turned, and Li Ziheng had already stepped 1 foot out the door. "Li Ziheng!" Jiangwan's voice suddenly rang out. Immediately following was the sound of hurried footsteps. Before Li Ziheng could turn around, he suddenly felt a soft touch on his back, along with the warmth of Jiangwan's body. "Don't leave me, okay?" Jiangwan hugged him from behind, her voice no longer as forceful and sharp as before. Li Ziheng sighed softly. "Jiangwan, it's impossible between us now. Let go. Let's leave each other with some dignity." Jiangwan spoke in a choked, hoarse voice. "You said you'd be good to me forever. You can't go back on your word. You can't." Li Ziheng's heart ached. He forcefully pried Jiangwan's hands off his waist. Turning his head, he looked down at Jiangwan. "Yes, I said that. But you betrayed me first." Jiangwan explained. "I didn't. Although I brought Cheng Hao into the company, nothing happened between us." "Nothing happened?" Li Ziheng laughed. He thought of the photos Cheng Hao had sent him. Perhaps Cheng Hao did it on purpose. Perhaps nothing really happened between them yet. But if things continued the way they were, wouldn't something happen sooner or later? Did he really have to wait until his wife cheated on him before getting a divorce? Jiangwan, emotional cheating is still cheating. Just like physical cheating, it crosses the line, and neither is forgivable. Li Ziheng's voice was calm. Jiangwan stubbornly said, "No, it's not the same. I love you in my heart." Li Ziheng said, "No, you don't. If you loved me, you wouldn't have deliberately ignored my feelings, knowing I would mind. Why don't you believe me? I told you, there's really nothing between me and Cheng Hao. Why won't you believe me? And you still want to divorce me? You know I can't live without you." Jiangwan cried. Her eyes were red, and tears uncontrollably streamed down her cheeks. "Jiangwan, are you still trying to lie to me at this point? He's your ex, the white moonlight you couldn't have. You still have feelings for him." Looking at Jiangwan's teary eyes, Li Ziheng felt no sympathy, only anger. "I already know everything about you and him. Why did he come back? Have you thought about that? Why did he come back only after your company became successful? Have you thought about that?" Looking at the woman he once loved to the core, Li Ziheng ultimately couldn't stand idly by. He decided to tell Jiangwan the truth, to tell her the purpose of Cheng Hao's return. But before he could speak, Jiangwan's expression suddenly changed. Jiangwan stopped crying, but her face turned very ugly. You know everything? Who told you? Does it matter?" Li Ziheng frowned. "Of course it matters. Because the person who told you wants to create conflict between us. She wants us to get divorced." Jiangwan gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with resentment. "Tell me, who told you all this?" Li Ziheng shouted loudly. "Enough!" Jiangwan was stunned. She stared at Li Ziheng blankly, surprisingly quiet for a moment. "Jiangwan, until today, I was your husband. You had all this from me. Do you think that's appropriate? Now someone else tells me, and you don't feel a shred of self-reproach or guilt. But instead, you think they shouldn't have told me." Jiangwan, oh Jiangwan, what exactly is going on in your head? How did your values become so twisted? You're so unfamiliar to me now. You're no longer the soft-hearted girl who used to cling to me. It's over between us. I've let go of everything about you, and I don't want to pursue it anymore." Li Ziheng's tone was icy, determined to end things with Jiangwan completely. Jiangwan shook her head violently, trying to explain, "No, it's not like that, my love. Listen to me. I brought Chung Hao back just to make him angry, to get revenge on him. Revenge for him leaving me. Later. Later, I didn't expect him to have connections and resources, so I wanted to use him. Use him. Li Ziheng couldn't. With that, Li Ziheng dragged his suitcase and quickly left, without looking back. Li Ziheng, I told you everything. Why are you still leaving me? I said, you're the only one in my heart. Why don't you believe me? Why? Jiang Wan shouted helplessly. Watching Li Ziheng's resolute departure, she collapsed to the ground, sobbing softly. Dragging his suitcase, Li Ziheng stood at the entrance of the neighborhood. Soon, a red sports car stopped in front of him. The driver was Inya. Before leaving, Li Ziheng had contacted Inya and asked her to send someone to pick him up. Young Master Ziheng, is this considered overtime at this hour? And he got out of the car and took the initiative to open the trunk. As she spoke, she playfully smiled at Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng smiled. No, I asked you to send someone, but I didn't say you had to come yourself. This was your own choice. Inya pouted, pretending to be pitiful. To say, the hearts of capitalists are indeed black, always exploiting poor workers like us. Seeing Inya's act, Li Ziheng laughed. If you're pitiful, then there's no one pitiful in this world. The two got into the car. Before long, the car stopped in front of a villa. Inya opened the trunk, wanting to help Li Ziheng take out his suitcase. But because the suitcase was too heavy, she couldn't lift it. Li Ziheng stood by, watching quietly, a slight smile on his lips. What are you laughing at? Inya blushed, looking at Li Ziheng with slight embarrassment and dissatisfaction. Did you put rocks in the suitcase? It's so heavy. Li Ziheng stepped forward and lifted the suitcase out with one hand. Pulling out the handle, Li Ziheng smiled. All right, it's getting late. You should head back. Remember to message me when you get home, to let me know you're safe. Oh. Inya nodded obediently and took out her phone. Li Ziheng turned and walked towards the villa gate. Just as he opened the door with his key, his phone suddenly buzzed. He curiously took out his phone and saw that Inya had sent him a message. Young master, I'm home. After reading the message, Li Ziheng was stunned. He turned around and saw Inya walking towards him. Li Ziheng looked puzzled. What are you doing? Inya smiled mischievously, reporting to the young master. I live here too. You're staying here? Li Ziheng seemed not to have registered. Anya walked past him, pushed open the door, and expertly slipped into house slippers printed with white rabbits. She turned her head, a radiant smile on her face. Young master, what are you standing there for? Come in quickly. Didn't I ask you to rent a villa for me? This is... Li Ziheng stood at the doorway, frowning slightly. Anya blinked. That's right, I rented my villa to you. Is there a problem? Or do you find me an eyesore? A man and a woman living alone together. It's not appropriate. What's inappropriate? You provide the money, I provide the villa. We both get what we need. Anya's expression was one of complete indifference. Seeing Li Ziheng still hesitating, she urged, come on, don't just stand there, hurry up and come in. I made dinner. It'll get cold if we don't eat soon. Hearing this, Li Ziheng thought for a moment, then entered. After entering the house, Anya led Li Ziheng to put his luggage in the guest bedroom on the second floor. All right, hurry up and wash your hands for dinner. Anya went downstairs, a joyful look on her face. On the dinner table were 3 dishes and a soup, 2 meat dishes, 1 vegetable dish, and a bowl of cucumber egg drop soup. It wasn't extravagant, but it wasn't bad either. Anya went to the kitchen and brought out 2 bowls of rice and 2 sets of chopsticks. I practiced my cooking, try it. Looking at Anya's expectant eyes, Li Ziheng nodded slightly, picked up his chopsticks, and put a piece of meat in his mouth. He chewed carefully and swallowed. It's all right. Anya was clearly not satisfied with this evaluation. You're quite demanding. She huffed in dissatisfaction. The two of them began to eat. During the meal, Li Ziheng again suggested renting a different villa the next day and explained his reasons. Mainly, he was a man living with Anya, and if people found out, he was afraid it would have a bad impact. Of course, this impact wasn't on him, but on Anya. Anya was a celebrity in Cloud City, with many people paying attention to her. If people knew that Anya was living with him, who knows what kind of rumors might spread? Let them gossip. This is perfect. It'll save me from people saying I like women. Anya was dismissive. She even seemed a little excited. This response, this reaction, made Li Ziheng feel somewhat helpless. Since Anya herself didn't mind, it seemed he didn't need to mind either. Li Ziheng thought for a moment and suddenly said, since we're sharing, then the rent. The rent will be at market price, but it's the price for renting the whole place. Young master, I'm a beautiful woman sharing a place with you. It's a feast for the eyes every day. You wouldn't possibly want to haggle, would you? Anya immediately interrupted Li Ziheng, then added, besides, I'll cook occasionally. You can save a lot on food. Li Ziheng. The night passed without a word. The next day, Li Ziheng woke up early and prepared breakfast. He was eating when he heard footsteps from the hallway. Soon after, he heard Anya's surprised voice. "Young master, you can cook." Li Ziheng looked up at Anya and said curtly, "Stop talking nonsense. What time is it already? Hurry up and eat. Then drive me to the company." "Yes, ma'am." Anya giggled, walked over quickly, pulled out a chair, sat down, and started eating. Young master, how is your cooking so good?" Anya's cheeks were puffed out, her clear eyes sparkling with surprise. "I've practiced my cooking." Li Ziheng repeated Anya's words from the previous night back to her. Anya's face turned red, a little embarrassed. There was no comparison between their cooking skills. Anya's cooking was edible, but definitely not delicious, and it didn't look very appealing. But Li Ziheng's dishes not only looked good, but also tasted amazing. No comparison, no harm. Anya felt a little offended. Half an hour later, the two arrived at Yunhai International Trading. Today was Li Ziheng's first day taking over the company, and for this, he had specially put on a black suit. "Good morning, President." "Good morning, President." On the way to the elevator, people kept greeting Anya. During this time, everyone looked at Li Ziheng beside Anya with curious eyes. After the two entered the elevator, the employees who had just greeted Anya began to gossip in the company group chat. "What's going on? Why did President and bring a handsome guy to the company?" "What handsome guy? Are you sure?" "Everyone knows President An's sexual orientation is abnormal." "It's absolutely true. I saw it with my own eyes." "I saw it too, and I have to say, President has good taste. Her boyfriend is so handsome." "Boyfriend? Really? This is big news." "Probably. You didn't see." President An was smiling when she came into the company today. "What? The Ice Queen can smile? Are there any photos? Show me." "Get lost, you little eunuch." The company group chat exploded. But the two people involved, Anya and Li Ziheng, were completely unaware. Taking the exclusive elevator to the president's office, Anya poured Li Ziheng a cup of coffee. "Young master, I have detailed information about the company on my computer. Please take a look. After you've finished, I'll hold a senior management meeting around 11 o'clock to announce your identity." "The meeting can wait. I'll decide after I've read the information." Li Ziheng nodded slightly. He sat in the boss's chair in the president's office and opened a folder on the desktop. But what greeted his eyes was a picture of two anime guys. "Ah, not that document. Don't click around." Anya's peripheral vision caught it, and she quickly went, "Oh, okay, thank you." Li Ziheng was also a little embarrassed, and he began to read the information seriously. Time passed by. During this time, a secretary knocked on the door to report on work. However, it was all done in the lounge area of the office. Before leaving, the secretary secretly glanced at Li Ziheng, who was sitting in the president's office area, with a strange look in her eyes. Anya didn't explain and pretended not to see it. A minute later, the company group chat exploded again. At the same time, the Jiang Corporation was holding an emergency meeting of senior management. Jiang Haisheng, the chairman of the company, also attended the meeting, which was rare. Regarding Yunhai's cancellation of the cooperation and the resignation of the chief pharmaceutical R&D engineer, does anyone have anything to say? Jiang Haisheng's face was grim. With Yunhai canceling the cooperation, the Jiang Corporation had directly lost half of its business. The resignation of the chief pharmaceutical R&D engineer had also directly brought the in-depth drug optimization project to a halt. These two events were undoubtedly a huge blow to the Jiang Corporation. Below, the company's senior executives all lowered their heads, unsure of what to say. They had only found out about this last night, and they hadn't even figured out the reason. Seeing that no one in the management was speaking, Jiang Haisheng frowned and turned to Jiang Wan in the lower right. "General Manager Jiang, I handed over the company to you to manage at the beginning of the year. Tell me what's going on." "That," Jiang Wan was about to explain. Jiang Haisheng said coldly, "This is the company. You should call me chairman." "Yes, chairman." Jiang Wan bit her lip and explained, "Yunhai canceling the cooperation is not our problem, but as for Sister Sue's resignation." Thump, thump, thump. Jiang Haisheng frowned, his fingers tapping the table rhythmically. In the large meeting room, everyone was silent. After a long while, Jiang Haisheng said in a deep voice, "Regarding the person Yunhai mentioned, who do you think it could be?" "I think it's Cheng Hao." Jiang Wan replied without hesitation. "Cheng Hao has a wide network of contacts, and the reason we were able to open up overseas channels before was largely due to Cheng Hao." However, before Jiang Wan could finish, Jiang Haisheng immediately denied it. "It can't be him. Cheng Hao has only been with the company for less than a month, but the cooperation with Yunhai started 5 years ago. At that time, Yunhai didn't even know who Cheng Hao was." After a pause, Jiang Haisheng added, "Besides, what kind of person is Cheng Hao? Why would Yunhai give him face? If it's not him, then who could it be?" Jiang Wan was stunned. When she first heard the news, her first thought was Chung Hao. But after hearing her father's words, she realized. That's right. Chung Hao had only been with the company for a month, but the cooperation with Yun Hai started 5 years ago. What does this have to do with Chung Hao? But if it's not Chung Hao, then who could it be? 5 years ago? She and Li Ziheng got together 5 years ago. Could it be? Jiang Wan's eyes trembled, her eyes filled with disbelief. This meeting lasted for over an hour. But the outcome of the meeting was unsatisfactory. Neither of the two important issues was resolved. For this, Chairman Jiang Haixing flew into a rage in the meeting room and scolded all the department heads. Chairman's office. Jiang Haixing sat in his executive chair, his face gloomy, his anger still lingering. I've only given you authority for less than a year, and you've already created such a big problem. Do you deserve my trust? Dad, I'm not responsible for these two things. Yun Hai wants to cancel the cooperation, and Sister Sue wants to resign. What can I do? Jiang Wan stood in front of the desk, her head down, looking aggrieved. Jiang Haixing wanted to get angry again, but seeing his daughter Jiang Wan's aggrieved look, he couldn't bear it. The company belongs to our family. Those executives may not care, but we must. Once we lose the cooperation with Yun Hai, the company will inevitably go downhill. Secondly, Su Yi's resignation will directly affect the quality of the company's drugs and subsequent projects. These two things must be resolved. Jiang Haixing took a deep breath, thought for a moment, and said in a deep voice, Go to Yun Hai yourself. Try to negotiate again. Even if you can't win them over, at least find out who they are talking about. Also, you have to contact Sister Sue again. At any cost, make sure she continues the drug optimization project. Even if it's private work, ask her to name a price. As long as it's within our budget, we'll meet her demands. Jiang Wan nodded. After a pause, Jiang Haixing said, Put some pressure on the sales department. If the cooperation with Yun Hai is lost, they must find new business to make up for it. Every little bit helps. By the way, why didn't I see the head of the sales department at today's meeting? Why didn't he come to this kind of meeting? Hearing this, Jiang Wan immediately explained. Something happened at Chung Hao's home. He went back yesterday. Jiang Haixing frowned. Chung Hao? He's only been with the company for a month. How did he become the sales manager? He looked at Jiang Wan, who looked away. Jiang Haixing suppressed his anger and asked, Did he apply for leave through the proper channels? Not yet. Jiang Wan shook her head. Damn it. Jiang Haixing slammed the table, looking displeased. Jiang Wan, what have you been doing lately? Don't tell me you still have feelings for that Chung Hao. Don't forget, you're married. Are you being fair to Li Ziheng by doing this? Back then, if it weren't for Li Ziheng's 3 million yuan dowry, the company would have gone bankrupt long ago, and it wouldn't be where it is today. Although Li Ziheng is also a loser, compared to Chung Hao, he at least helped our family. What about Chung Hao? Has he helped our family or the company in any way? Jiang Wan's expression changed slightly, and she quickly shook her head. Dad, I have it. It's better that you have it. I know what kind of person Chung Hao is better than you. He's a mercenary, incompetent, and likes to talk big. I didn't approve of him when you were together. Besides, even though you were so persistent back then, didn't he still leave you to go abroad for further studies? I thought he would have improved after 5 years abroad, but as soon as he returned, he came to our company. What does that mean? It means he's still the same loser as before. When it came to Chung Hao, Jiang Haixing's eyes were full of disdain. Dad, Chung Hao is not as bad as you think. He's brought a lot of business to the company in the past month. Even the overseas channel was thanks to him. Jiang Wan tried to defend Chung Hao, speaking up for him. But Jiang Haixing just smiled. What does the overseas channel have to do with him? Dad, how can you say that? The overseas channel was thanks to Chung Hao. Thanks to what? I personally went to Yun Hai and waited in their company for over 3 hours, begging President in for the overseas channel. What does it have to do with Chung Hao? That's impossible, Chung Hao clearly said he. Jiang Wan had a shocked expression on her face. Seeing Jiang Wan still speaking up for Chung Hao, Jiang Haixing became even more furious. You believe everything he says? I told you he's all talk and no ability. Why don't you believe me? Jiang Wan panicked and quickly explained. Dad, it's not that I don't believe you. I just didn't expect Chung Hao to lie to me. Jiang Haixing waved his hand. All right, Chung Hao is not important. The most urgent thing is the Yun Hai and drug optimization projects. Go to Yun Hai immediately, personally. Be sincere. I'll go now. Jiang Wan nodded and turned to leave the office. At this moment, Jiang Haixing seemed to remember something and added, By the way, it's your mother's birthday today. Bring Li Ziheng home for dinner tonight. Hearing this, Jiang Wan's body stiffened for a moment, and she said softly, Okay. Back in her own general manager's office, Jiang Wan sat in her chair, her eyes somewhat dazed. Her father's words echoed in her mind like a heavy hammer. The cooperation with Yunhai has nothing to do with Chung Hao. The overseas channel also has nothing to do with Chung Hao. How could this be? Jiang Wan lowered her head slightly, her mood extremely complicated. She had always thought that Yunhai's cooperation with Zhang's and the overseas channel were related to Chung Hao. But thinking back carefully, Chung Hao seemed to have never explicitly admitted it. He had only said some ambiguous words, neither refusing nor admitting. At 11 a.m., Yunhai Company, President's Office. The female president, Enya, returned to her desk, holding her forehead, speechless. Young master, headquarters wants you to take over the company directly and be the chief person in charge. But now you're telling me you want to start from the bottom? How am I supposed to explain this to headquarters? Just half an hour ago, Li Ziheng had finished reading all the documents and then proposed to start from the bottom in the sales department. Enya refused and tried to persuade him in various ways, but Li Ziheng was determined, which gave Enya a headache. Li Ziheng smiled. Don't worry about headquarters. If they really ask, just tell them it's my idea. They won't make things difficult for you. Seeing Li Ziheng's determination, Enya knew she couldn't persuade him, so she asked curiously, "Can you tell me why? I've been a house husband for 5 years, and I feel a bit out of touch with society. Secondly, I've never worked in a company before, and my understanding of the company is limited to the documents I just read. If I want to manage the company well, I need to have a deep understanding of it, right?" Li Ziheng's words were recognized by Enya. However, starting from the bottom would be hard work, and she felt that Li Ziheng might not be able to persevere. After thinking for a moment, Enya nodded in agreement. "You are the young master. You have the final say. But if headquarters blames me, you have to take responsibility. Don't let me take the fall. It wasn't easy for me to get to where I am today. Don't ruin it for me." "Don't worry." Li Ziheng smiled back. Enya suggested, "All right, if you want to understand the company and train yourself, then go to the sales department first. Running sales is the best way to train someone." "Okay, inform them. I'll report to the sales department today." Li Ziheng nodded and turned to leave. At this moment, the secretary suddenly knocked on the door and walked in. "President, the front desk says that Zhang's general manager, Jiang Wan, wants to see you. Should we let her in?" Upon hearing the name Jiang Wan, Anya was slightly stunned. She subconsciously looked at Li Ziheng, who had not yet left the office. The secretary stared at Anya, waiting for her decision. But Anya continued to stare at Li Ziheng, so the secretary followed suit and looked at Li Ziheng as well. Li Ziheng left the office expressionlessly. Anya thought for a moment and then nodded. "Let her come up." "Yes, President." The secretary left. Before long, Jiang Wan arrived at the floor of the president's office. However, just as she stepped out of the elevator, she saw a figure she did not expect. Li Ziheng. Jiang Wan was stunned for a moment. Li Ziheng also saw Jiang Wan, but did not greet her. Instead, he entered the elevator directly and pressed the floor button. "Miss Jiang, President, and is still waiting for you in her office." "Okay." Jiang Wan came back to her senses and followed the secretary to the president's office. As the president of Yunhai and the famous goddess of Yunqing, Anya's beauty and aura were self-evident. Seeing Anya in person, Jiang Wan felt a sense of inferiority rise within her. "President, hello, I am from Zhang's." "No need to introduce yourself. I know who you are." Before Jiang Wan could finish her self-introduction, Anya interrupted her directly. "Miss Jiang, if you have something to say, just say it directly. I am very busy." "President, I came to talk to you about the cooperation between Yunhai and Zhang's. I know that Zhang's strength is far from meeting the threshold for cooperation with Yunhai, but we can concede profits, hoping that Yunhai can continue to maintain the cooperation with Zhang's. Businessmen seek profit, so as long as they are willing to concede profits, Yunhai should be able to continue cooperating with Zhang's." This was the most effective way Jiang Wan could think of. "I'm sorry, Miss Jiang may have misunderstood. We at Yunhai do not care about this little profit. If we did, we would not have cooperated with Zhang's for 5 years." Anya's expression was cold, and then she continued, "If it's about cooperation, Miss Jiang should go to the business department, not come to me. After all, this kind of small cooperation has always been handled by the people below. The cooperation I want to talk about starts at a minimum of 100 million yuan. I have no interest in any cooperation below that. If there is nothing else, Miss Jiang can leave." After saying that, Anya lowered her head and looked at the documents in her hand. Anya's words made Jiang Wan feel somewhat ashamed. Zhang's biggest cooperation, in front of Yunhai and Anya, did not even have the qualification to be discussed. This contrast made Jiang Wan feel a burning sensation on her face, as if she had been slapped. Jiang Wan unwillingly asked, "President, may I ask, since Yunhai looks down on Zhang's, Why did you cooperate with Zhang's 5 years ago? Anya continued to handle the documents without raising her head. Because of one person. Jiang Wan's eyes flickered. Can you tell me who that person is? Sorry, I can't tell you. Is it Li Ziheng? Miss Jiang, you are disturbing my work? Anya raised her head, her eyes somewhat unkind. Secretary, see the guest out. The secretary heard the order and came over. Miss Jiang, please. Jiang Wan was somewhat unwilling, but since the order to leave had been given, she couldn't continue to stay here shamelessly. Leaving Yinhai, Jiang Wan returned to her car. She did not rush to drive back to the company, but carefully recalled the conversation with Anya. Anya looked down on cooperation below 100 million yuan. Then why was Anya so clear about the cooperation with Zhang's? Who was the person who facilitated the cooperation between Zhang's and Yinhai? 5 years ago. The only person who seemed to be connected to 5 years ago was Li Ziheng, because 5 years ago was the year she married Li Ziheng. But what did her marriage to Li Ziheng have to do with Yinhai and Anya? Suddenly, Jiang Wan seemed to have thought of a clue. Wait, Li Ziheng just appeared at Yinhai. Could it really be him? Thinking of this, Jiang Wan immediately took out her phone and called Li Ziheng. But although the call went through, Li Ziheng did not answer. After one unanswered call, Jiang Wan called 3 more times. When she persevered and dialed Li Ziheng's phone for the 4th time, the other party directly turned off their phone. Bastard! Li Ziheng, why don't you answer my calls? Jiang Wan was furious, and she threw her phone hard on the passenger seat. After a while, she calmed down. She thought a lot, and also imagined many possibilities. But the biggest possibility was that Anya and Li Ziheng knew each other, or Anya liked Li Ziheng. Because of this liking, after she married Li Ziheng, Anya chose to cooperate with Zhang's. That's right, after Li Ziheng and I talked about divorce, Yinhai immediately canceled the cooperation. Jiang Wan believed she had found the reason. The reason was sufficient, and the timing was also coincidental. If once was an accident, then twice could not be an accident. How could there be so many coincidences in the world? Li Ziheng, was getting Anya to cancel the cooperation with Yinhai your revenge on me? If it was, then you may be disappointed. Jiang Wan, will never bow to you because of a cooperation with Yinhai. Jiang Wan gritted her teeth and thought to herself. Last night, she deliberately drank alcohol and then took advantage of her drunkenness to lower her stance and try to keep him. But Li Ziheng refused her ruthlessly. As the daughter of the Jiang family, the general manager of Zhang's, and the future heir of Zhang's, she had her own pride. She could try to keep him, but she would never bow her head and apologize. Last night's attempt was already the biggest concession she could make. 10 minutes later, in the Yinhai president's office, Anya turned on her phone, and after confirming that there were no more calls coming in, she curiously opened the Feishin app. Looking at the chat box with herself at the top, she mischievously clicked on it and added a note to her Feishin name. Sweet secretary. Looking at the note, Anya smiled mischievously. The phone belonged to Li Ziheng. He left in a hurry and forgot to take it. Anya was too lazy to send it down, so she waited for Li Ziheng to come back and find it himself. But unexpectedly, during this period, Jiang Wan kept calling Li Ziheng like crazy, so Anya got angry and turned off the phone. Back at Zhang's company, Jiang Wan reported her speculation and Anya's attitude truthfully. Hearing that Yunhai's cooperation was related to Li Ziheng, Jiang Haixing was obviously a little skeptical. This is all your speculation. Do you have any evidence? Once is a coincidence, but twice? Besides, I ran into Li Ziheng at Yunhai today. That doesn't prove anything. Jiang Haixing still refused to believe it. After all, having been Li Ziheng's father-in-law for 5 years, he thought he knew Li Ziheng well enough. Li Ziheng was a spineless man, and he had no ambition. How could such a person have any connection with Yunhai's president? With President Anne's wealth and status, how could she possibly be interested in a mere Li Ziheng? There was a huge gap between the two. Unless President Anne was blind, it was impossible for her to like Li Ziheng. Jiang Wan was anxious to see that her father did not believe her speculation. Dad, if you don't believe me, you can call and ask him. Anyway, I think that's what happened. Li Ziheng is behind the cancellation of Yunhai's cooperation. Jiang Haixing said with a stern face. I will naturally ask, but not now. When the family sits down for dinner tonight, I will ask him in person. But I'm already divorced from him. He might not come home for dinner tonight. You only signed the divorce agreement. You haven't gotten the divorce certificate yet. As long as you haven't gotten the certificate, he is still my son-in-law. But no buts, go contact him and tell him he must come home for dinner tonight. Tell him I said so. I don't believe he dares to disobey me. Okay then. Seeing her father say this, Jiang Wan could only agree helplessly. Time flies. It was already 5:30 in the afternoon. At Yunhai Company, employees started to leave work one after another at 5 o'clock. By this time, there were only a few people left in the large office building. Sales department. Li Ziheng was looking down at the client's information. Diagonally across from him, Anya rested her head on her hands, whining somewhat boredly. Do you have to work so hard? It's after work hours now. Can't you look at the information tomorrow? Work ended at 5 o'clock, and it was already 5:30, but Li Ziheng didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. But that wasn't the point. The point was, she wanted to eat the food Li Ziheng cooked. You don't have to wait for me. I'll leave after I finish reading the information. Li Ziheng didn't even lift his head, his eyes only on the client's information in his hands. The department manager had assigned him the task of maintaining client relationships, which was somewhat similar to after-sales customer service. This job was very relaxed most of the time, but also very tiring at other times. When there were no problems with the clients, Li Ziheng could slack off while getting paid. But once there was a problem with a client, he would be very busy and even possibly get scolded by the client. Anya rolled her eyes in exasperation. Do you think I want to wait for you? I just want to eat your cooking. Compared to yesterday, she had become much bolder. Mainly because after interacting with Li Ziheng, she found that this young master had no temper at all and was too easy to talk to. Li Ziheng looked up, glanced at Anya, and then put down the information in his hand. Seeing this, Anya asked suspiciously, Why? Aren't you going to read anymore? Didn't you say you wanted to eat my cooking? Let's go. If we delay any longer, the market will be closed. Li Ziheng organized the documents, turned off the computer, and walked towards the elevator. Anya quickly followed, carrying her LV bag. She walked alongside Li Ziheng, tilting her head and staring at him, saying with a smile, Young master, I've discovered that you not only have a good temper, but you're also very caring. A man of your caliber. Isk, I really want you. As she said this, a light of longing suddenly flashed in her eyes. Li Ziheng frowned, turned his head and glared at her, saying in a deep voice, Don't flirt with me. Giggle. Anya laughed. After laughing, she noticed with surprise that Li Ziheng's ears seemed to be a little red. Seeing this, as if she had discovered a new continent, she was about to tease him. But unfortunately, Li Ziheng's phone suddenly rang. He took out his phone and pressed the answer button without thinking. Hello, who is this? Who is this? Li Ziheng, did you delete my number? Jiang Wan's questioning voice came from the phone's receiver. I'm sorry, Miss Jiang. We have already signed the divorce agreement. You have no right to interfere in my affairs. Li Ziheng's tone was cold and distant. Li Ziheng. Jiang Wan was furious. She shouted loudly. Li Ziheng didn't speak, just listened quietly, and even had the urge to hang up the phone. Then a deep breath came from the phone, and Jiang Wan's tone obviously improved a bit. She said softly, Today is Friday. Don't forget to go to my parents' house for dinner. Li Ziheng refused without thinking. I'm sorry. I'm not free today. Besides, I don't think it's necessary. Although I signed the divorce agreement, we haven't officially processed the divorce certificate yet. Legally, we are still husband and wife. Since we are husband and wife, it is necessary. Jiang Wan's attitude was firm, with a sense of not giving up until she achieved her goal. Li Ziheng thought for a moment, but still refused. But I promised a friend that I would cook for her tonight. Hearing this, Jiang Wan's emotions on the other end of the phone were obviously a bit off. She asked anxiously, Friend? Male or female? What's your relationship? Do I know her? Li Ziheng turned his head to look at Anya, and then replied, Female, just friends, I don't know if you know her. Jiang Wan kindly reminded him. A woman? Li Ziheng, the women outside are not as good as you think. Don't be fooled. This is my business. You don't need to worry about it. Mind your own business. Li Ziheng's tone was a little impatient, and then he said, If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. Li Ziheng was about to hang up the phone, but Anya suddenly leaned over for some reason. Her voice was soft and sweet, and she said in a coquettish tone, Honey, were you talking to on the phone? Li Ziheng was stunned and looked at Anya in confusion. The latter's lips curled up, and she winked at him playfully. Li Zi, huh? The phone hadn't been hung up yet, and Jiang Wan's furious roar came through the receiver. Even without the speakerphone on, the two could still hear it clearly. Li Ziheng hung up the phone without thinking. Anya thought Li Ziheng would lose his temper, and even if he didn't, he would definitely scold her. But to Anya's surprise, Li Ziheng just glanced at her and said, Don't do that again. After saying that, he walked straight into the elevator. Does this person have no temper at all? Anya muttered, and then quickly followed him into the elevator. Li Ziheng's eyes were deep, and he didn't say a word. He was still thinking about the call from Jiang Wan just now. Every Friday, Jiang Wan would pick him up after work to go to her parents' house for dinner. They had been married for 5 years, and it was like this every week. But every time they went, his father-in-law, Jiang Haisheng, would put on a long face and pick on him. He would either say that he was living off his wife or that he didn't take good care of Jiangwan. But what he said the most was how promising and successful someone else's son was, how much money he earned, and how good he was to his parents-in-law. Every time he said these things, Li Ziheng would lower his head and not respond. But every time his father-in-law, Jiang Haisheng, would slam his chopsticks on the table and scold him. Every week, Li Ziheng had gotten used to it. In his mind, he was living with Jiang Wan, and he only had to see his father-in-law once a week for dinner, so there was no need to make things unpleasant. In addition, Jiang Wan was the apple of her father's eye. No matter what, even for Jiang Wan's sake, he couldn't refute or disobey Jiang Haisheng. In short, Li Ziheng didn't want to make things difficult for Jiang Wan. As for the grievances, he could bear them. But now, there was no need for that anymore. He and Jiang Wan were getting divorced, and there was no need to endure Jiang Haisheng's cold eyes and ridicule anymore. Ding! The elevator door opened, and Li Ziheng walked out. At this moment, the text message notification sound suddenly rang. Li Ziheng opened it and saw that it was from Jiang Wan. "Tonight, you must come to dinner. Otherwise, I will not go to the Civil Affairs Bureau with you next Monday to process the divorce certificate." After reading the text message, Li Ziheng was a little angry. Jiang Wan was threatening him. After much deliberation, Li Ziheng still chose to go. This was not because Jiang Wan's threat had worked, but because Li Ziheng wanted to take advantage of this dinner to tell his parents-in-law about his and Jiang Wan's impending divorce. He actually had no good feelings for his father-in-law, but he was quite grateful to his mother-in-law. He and Jiang Wan had been married for 5 years, and although his father-in-law disliked him and was always sarcastic, his mother-in-law, however, had always thought highly of him. Over the past 5 years, she had been very kind to him, always greeting him warmly whenever they met. She would even scold Jiang Wan for his sake. Because of this, Jiang Wan had lost her temper several times, saying that her mother had forgotten her daughter after getting a son-in-law. Thinking of his mother-in-law, Li Ziheng felt that even if they were to divorce, he had to inform her in advance. This was the basic respect due to his mother-in-law, to an elder. Li Ziheng said apologetically, "I may not have time to cook for you tonight. How about you just make do with something? All right, then make it up to me tomorrow." Although Anya was a little disappointed, she didn't make things difficult for Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng smiled and nodded. Just as they left the company, Anya suddenly asked, "It's not easy to get a taxi at this time. How about I give you a ride?" It was now rush hour, and getting a taxi would be quite difficult. Moreover, the nearest bus stop and subway station were also a bit far. Li Ziheng obviously realized this as well. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble you." "No trouble at all. I'll drive you, and you'll cook for me. Isn't that great?" Anya smiled brightly and walked quickly to her red Ferrari sports car. Soon, she drove the car in front of Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng got in the car and gave his in-laws' home address. They didn't speak on the way. After Anya dropped Li Ziheng off at his destination, she watched him enter the residential area. His in-laws lived in a large flat in a high-end riverside community with over 200 square meters of usable space. The surrounding environment was quiet and serene, and the property was worth over 8 million yuan. Ding dong! He rang the doorbell. After a while, the door opened. His mother-in-law, Lu Fangting, was wearing an apron and holding a spatula, her face full of a loving smile. "Ziheng, you're here. Come in. Sit down. Let Wana pour you some water. There's one more dish, your favorite braised shrimp balls. We can eat as soon as it's ready." His mother-in-law was as enthusiastic as ever. The look in her eyes when she looked at Li Ziheng was as if she were looking at her own son. Li Ziheng felt a warmth in his heart. He smiled and nodded, changed into house slippers, and went to the living room. His mother-in-law gave some instructions and then returned to the kitchen. In the living room, his father-in-law, Jiang Haisheng, was sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, reading a newspaper. Jiang Wan sat beside him, looking down and playing with her phone. Hearing the movement, she looked up at Li Ziheng, but only for a glance, and then she went back to playing with her phone. The atmosphere was a bit off, but Li Ziheng was used to it. He didn't sit down in the living room, but went into the kitchen to help his mother-in-law. Soon, the last dish was also on the table. Li Ziheng took the initiative to set the bowls and chopsticks, and then helped his mother-in-law pull out her chair. "Ziheng is so considerate and caring." Lu Fangting smiled, and then glared at her husband Jiang Haisheng and daughter Jiang Wan. Unlike these two, acting like lords, waiting to be served. After everyone was seated, Jiang Haisheng started his usual routine of belittling Li Ziheng. During this, his mother-in-law couldn't bear it anymore and spoke up for Li Ziheng. But his father-in-law started criticizing Li Ziheng even more fiercely, even showing signs of losing his temper. Jiang Wan pouted nonchalantly and picked up her chopsticks to eat. She picked up a piece of spicy chicken and was about to put it in her mouth when she heard Li Ziheng suddenly say, "Dad, you don't have to be so angry. I'm already planning to divorce Wan." As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the three people at the table changed dramatically. Jiang Haisheng was surprised. Although he had heard Jiang Wan mention it, he thought it was just Li Ziheng speaking out of anger and not to be taken seriously. Jiang Wan's face turned pale, and her expression became stiff. The most emotional one was his mother-in-law, Lu Fangting. Divorce? Why divorce? Lu Fangting put down her chopsticks, first looked at Li Ziheng with a bit of heartache, and then slapped the back of her daughter Jiang Wan's head. "Waner, tell me, did you bully Ziheng again? How many times have I told you that work is not important? Family is. You always ignore Ziheng's feelings for your work. Is that how a wife should behave?" Jiang Wan looked aggrieved. "Mom, why are you hitting me? It's not me who brought up the divorce. So, what if you didn't bring it up? I know Ziheng's personality and temper too well. Unless you did something to hurt him. He loves you so much. How could he possibly bring up divorce? You ungrateful thing, haven't I told you in private? Ziheng is a good man, and you must cherish him. Why can't you understand? Do you have to wait until the divorce, until you see Ziheng forming a family with another woman, to no regret?" Jiang Wan originally wanted to argue back, but when she heard her mother say that Li Ziheng would form a family with another woman, and recalling the woman's voice on the phone an hour ago, she fell silent. Seeing that her daughter was silent, Lu Fangting turned to Li Ziheng with a look of pity. "Ziheng, I know you must be very angry and hurt right now. Mom understands you. You love Waner so much. If Waner hadn't broken your heart, you would never have brought up divorce. But can you, for Mom's sake, not divorce for now? Whatever the problem is, can we sit down as a family and solve it slowly?" There was a hint of pleading in her mother-in-law's voice. This was the first time his mother-in-law had spoken to Li Ziheng in this tone. Hearing this, Li Ziheng felt a little guilty and a little sour. His mother-in-law had been very good to him. After they got married, she treated him like her own son. In fact, in this family, only his mother-in-law understood him best. Every time his father-in-law scolded him, his mother-in-law would privately give his father-in-law a good scolding and then come to him and comfort him. He remembered that Li Ziheng had once mentioned that he was born prematurely and was naturally weaker than others. After learning about this, Lu Fangting, without a word, started making nourishing soup at home for several hours every day, and she delivered it to Li Ziheng for a whole month. In her words, it didn't matter how he was before. What mattered was that he was now also Lu Fangting's son, and she naturally had to love and take care of her son. Thinking of this, Li Ziheng's heart wavered slightly. It wasn't because of Jiang Wan, but because of his mother-in-law, Lu Fangting. He really couldn't bear to make his mother-in-law sad. Seeing that Li Ziheng didn't speak, Lu Fangting wanted to persuade him further, but his father-in-law suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "Li Ziheng, are you even a man? Using divorce to threaten Wana. What is this?" For the past 5 years, Wana has been working hard outside, working tirelessly every day. Hasn't she contributed more than you? You don't take care of the house and Wana properly, and now you're talking about divorce. Is this how you behave as a husband and a son-in-law? Jiang Haisheng had a stern expression, scolding him like an elder. Hearing this, Jiang Wan lowered her head slightly, but a slight smile appeared at the corner of her lips. Lu Fangting was not happy and shouted at her husband, "Jiang Haisheng, what are you talking about? Wana has contributed for the past 5 years, but hasn't Ziheng? If it weren't for Ziheng, could Wana have worked so hard?" "Shut up!" Jiang Haisheng frowned and shouted at his wife, Lu Fangting. "Over the years, you've spoiled him too much. They say a loving mother often raises a spoiled child, and it's true. If you hadn't contradicted me every time and spoken up for him, would he have become like this? Disrespectful to elders, no sense of propriety, talking about divorce so easily. Does he even have any regard for us old folks? He's like this now, and you're still speaking up for him. Are you losing your mind?" Jiang Haisheng rarely lost his temper with Lu Fangting. Lu Fangting's chest heaved violently, and her face was flushed, clearly very angry. Fine, it's all my fault, right? All right, Jiang Haisheng, I see it now. You don't want to live this life anymore, and neither do I. Ziheng, let's go. Since this family doesn't need the two of us, then we'll move out. From now on, we'll depend on each other. I don't believe that we'll starve to death without them." With that, Lu Fangting got up and pulled Li Ziheng to leave. Jiang Haisheng frowned and said angrily, Nonsense. Fonting, when did I say I didn't want to live this life anymore? How old are you? Can't you be more mature? Are you still playing at running away from home? Just think of me as being unreasonable. Anyway, as long as Ziheng leaves this house, then I'll leave too. Today, if you two don't apologize to Ziheng, I won't compromise. Lu Fonting was resolute, pulling Li Ziheng towards the door. Enough! At this moment, Jiang Wan couldn't sit still anymore. She suddenly roared, startling both Jiang Haixing and Lu Fonting. Jiang Wan stood up, her eyes red, her eyes burning with anger. She stared at Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng, are you satisfied with this outcome? Do you have to make our family a mess before you're satisfied? Don't you just want a divorce? I said, next Monday, I'll go with you to the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle the divorce procedures. Now, get out. Get out of our house. I don't want to see. Smack! Before Jiang Wan could finish speaking, Lu Fonting quickly walked over, raised her hand, and slapped her hard across the face. You ungrateful thing. How could I have given birth to such a brainless thing? Lu Fonting was furious. She had tried her best to remedy and save her daughter Jiang Wan and Li Ziheng's marriage. But this fool couldn't see it, and even threw a tantrum. Did she really think that being loud meant she was right? Mom, you hit me because of him? Jiang Wan covered her face, her eyes filled with disbelief. From childhood to adulthood, her mother, Lu Fonting, wanted you. Seeing her daughter cry, Lu Fonting's heart ached. She wanted to comfort her, but before she could say anything, Jiang Wan glared fiercely at Li Ziheng and stormed out. As she passed Li Ziheng, she shot him another hateful glare. Waner, where are you going? Lu Fonting hurriedly called out. But Jiang Wan didn't even turn her head, and soon she was out of sight. Lu Fonting wanted to chase after her, but after taking 2 steps, she stopped. She looked at Li Ziheng, her eyes filled with a hint of pleading. Ziheng, go after her quickly. I'm worried that Waner might do something foolish. Okay. Li Ziheng couldn't refuse his mother-in-law's request. He nodded and said sincerely, Mom, take care of yourself. After saying that, he turned and walked out the door. As he stepped out, Li Ziheng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The biggest pressure he faced during this visit wasn't Jiang Haixing or Jiang Wan, but his mother-in-law, Lu Fonting. His mother-in-law treated him too well. Regarding the divorce, he had imagined many possible scenarios, but he never expected things to develop so unexpectedly. However, this was also good. At least he had finally told his father-in-law and mother-in-law about his intention to divorce. His father-in-law would most likely agree. As for his mother-in-law, although she would object, the divorce was between him and Jiang Wan, so her objection wouldn't matter much. After Jiang Wan and Li Ziheng left, only Jiang Haixing and Lu Fonting remained at home. With her daughter and son-in-law gone, Lu Fonting stopped making a scene. She returned to the dining table and sat down, looking at her husband, Jiang Haixing, with some concern. Haixing, do you really want to see Waner get a divorce? This is between the two of them. If they want a divorce, let them. We have no right to interfere. Jiang Haixing's expression was calm. Their daughter, Jiang Wan, was good-looking, had a good temperament, and was capable of managing the company. Even if she got divorced with her assets, she wouldn't have trouble finding another man. In fact, she might even find an excellent partner who was well-matched and could help her in her career. I know you have issues with Ziheng, but it was my idea to let him stay home and take care of Waner. You've seen how well he's taken care of her these past 5 years. Lu Fonting sighed helplessly and continued. Ziheng is a good kid. If possible, I still hope they can live together happily. Children have their own destinies. We, as elders, shouldn't interfere too much. Let nature take its course. After saying that, Jiang Haixing poured himself a glass of wine and drank alone. Lu Fonting was in a bad mood. She picked up her chopsticks, but had no appetite. You eat. I don't have an appetite. I'm going back to my room to rest. Lu Fonting put down her chopsticks and went back to her room. Jiang Haixing frowned, slightly displeased, but said nothing. Meanwhile, after going downstairs, Li Ziheng started looking for Jiang Wan in the neighborhood. He knew Jiang Wan too well. She would get angry and run away from home, but she would never leave the neighborhood. Sure enough, after searching for a while, Li Ziheng found Jiang Wan sitting by the flower bed. Jiang Wan was squatting on the ground, holding her phone and wiping her tears. Li Ziheng had seen this situation many times. Every time Jiang Wan argued with her father, she would cry, and every time she would squat in some inconspicuous corner of the neighborhood and cry secretly. This time was obviously no exception. Just as Li Ziheng was about to go over and comfort her, he suddenly overheard Jiang Wan's phone conversation. Chung Hao, focus on your family matters. I'm here at the company, so don't worry. I can help you with the money issue. Li Zihang's steps suddenly stopped. He smiled self-deprecatingly. She is Chung Hao now. Does she still need my comfort? Thinking this, Li Zihang turned around and sent a message to his mother-in-law, Lu Fonting, telling her not to worry, that Jiang Wan was downstairs. After sending the message, Li Zihang walked out of the neighborhood. He originally planned to take a taxi back to the Binjiang Villa area, but as soon as he reached the neighborhood gate, he saw Anya's red Ferrari parked by the roadside. Beep! Inside the car, Anya honked the horn. Then the car window rolled down, and Anya leaned out, waving at Li Zihang, signaling him to get in. Li Zihang walked over and asked with some surprise, "Have you been here all this time?" Anya's eyes curved in a crescent, and she replied with a smile, "Yes. Are you touched? You didn't have to wait for me." Li Zihang smiled wryly. He didn't expect Anya to wait for him at the neighborhood gate. Anya's expression turned serious. "I think it's quite necessary." Li Zihang touched his nose, speechless. "I'm starving. When we get back, cook me some noodles." Anya complained, but as soon as she finished speaking, her gaze inadvertently glanced at Li Zihang's lower body. Then a blush gradually appeared on her pretty face. Looking at the somewhat bewildered Anya, Li Zihang nodded, agreeing to her request to cook noodles. Li Zihang got into the passenger seat, closed the door, and fastened his seatbelt. Anya started the car, and the roar of the supercar engine immediately sounded. At that moment, Jiang Wan also drove out of the neighborhood. Her gaze inadvertently caught sight of Li Zihang sitting in the passenger seat of the supercar. Seeing Li Zihang in someone else's car, and a woman driving it, Jiang Wan's heart skipped a beat. After a brief moment of daze, Jiang Wan came to her senses. But by then, the expensive red supercar had already driven far away. "Li Zihang, you're cheating on me with another woman." Jiang Wan gritted her teeth and took out her phone to call Li Zihang. She wanted to ask Li Zihang who the woman was who was wrecking her marriage. The call went through, but Li Zihang hung up immediately. Jiang Wan didn't give up and called 3 more times. But each time, Li Zihang hung up as soon as the call connected. Jiang Wan was furious. She opened her messaging app and sent 2 messages of accusation. "Li Zihang, you want to divorce me, not because of Chung Hao, but because you've been cheating on me with another woman, right? How could you do this to me? As a married man, shouldn't you keep your distance from other women? Or is it that you want to divorce me so you can make room for that mistress? To give her a title?" The first message was sent successfully, but the second one wasn't. Because when the second message was sent, a red exclamation mark appeared on the chat interface. Li Zihang had blocked her. Bastard! Jiang Wan, who was already a little angry, became even more furious at this moment. She wanted to chase after him and stop that red supercar. She wanted to slap that bitch who seduced her man, and then tell her loudly, "This is my man." But the idea, though good, was impossible, because that red supercar had long since disappeared. Jiang Wan's eyes were red, and her chest heaved violently. "Li Zihang, I will never forgive your betrayal." On the other side in the supercar, Li Zihang stuffed his phone into his pocket and looked out the car window at the fleeting night scene. Inside the car, the atmosphere was a bit strange. Li Zihang was feeling a bit depressed and didn't want to talk. But Anya had endless things to say. "Are you in a bad mood? Is it because of that ex-wife?" "Young master, I'm not very good at comforting people, but I think, with your conditions, what kind of woman can't you find? There are thousands of women in the world, and even more beautiful women. Your ex-wife has bad taste. That's her own fault. But you can't be like her. You should open your eyes and look around. Look at your surroundings. Look at your side. Look at those girls who are more excellent, more beautiful, have better figures, and are more charming than your ex-wife. Young master, why are you closing your eyes?" Seeing that Li Zihang was ignoring her, and he was also a little unhappy. Her beautiful eyes swirled, and she suddenly smiled, then pinched her throat and let out a delicate voice. "My dear brother, you say that all 4 elements are empty, yet you close your eyes tightly. If you open your eyes and look at me, I don't believe your eyes will be empty. Dear brother." Li Zihang was just closing his eyes to rest, but he wasn't asleep, let alone dead. After Anya's bizarre attack, he finally couldn't help but open his eyes, suppressing a smile, and glared at her. "Anya, you are the goddess in the hearts of many men in Yun City. Can you please take care of your image and reputation?" Anya threw a charming glance at Li Zihang and smiled like a flower. "You still know that I am a goddess? This goddess is now giving you a chance to pursue me. You should consider it carefully. Don't be ungrateful." "Enough," I said. "Stop flirting with me." Li Zihang couldn't handle it anymore. His originally depressed mood was much better after being teased by Anya. Anya looked disdainful. "What's wrong with flirting with you? If you keep nagging, I'll pin you down in the car and kiss you." Li Zihang. Looking at the goddessin, who had a perfect face, Li Ziheng began to doubt life. Is this her true face? Sure enough, the exterior is deceptive. She looks so polite, cultured, and elegant on the outside. But is she a joker on the inside? Li Ziheng was a little curious. What kind of expression would those men in Yun City have if they knew that the goddessin, whom they secretly admired, no, should be openly admired, was actually a female joker at heart? Within Yu's lead, the atmosphere in the car obviously became much more pleasant. The previous negative emotions brought about by Jiang Wan and his in-laws were swept away. The two talked and laughed, chatting about various gossip, and from time to time you could hear the two laughing from the bottom of their hearts. Back at the villa, and you couldn't wait to go back to her room to take a shower. Before going upstairs, she didn't forget to urge Li Ziheng. Young master, hurry up and cook the noodles. Remember to add eggs. I like to eat eggs. After saying that, she went upstairs. Li Ziheng had just changed his shoes when he heard Yu's urging, and he couldn't help but feel speechless. Who was the young master? Calling him young master while ordering him around? Although he was a little speechless, Li Ziheng still walked into the kitchen immediately. More than 10 minutes later, the noodles were ready. Li Ziheng went upstairs and knocked on Yu's door. The noodles are ready. Come down and eat while it's hot. After saying that, he was about to go downstairs, but Yu's voice came from the room. Young master, the door is not closed. Please come in and help me. Li Ziheng was a little curious, but he still turned the doorknob, pushed the door open, and walked in. The decoration style of the master bedroom was girly, mainly pink and white. After all, this was a girl's boudoir. Li Ziheng just glanced at it casually, without looking further. Yu's voice came from the bathroom. Young master, I forgot to bring my change of clothes. Please help me get a white lace nightgown from the closet. Li Ziheng didn't think much and walked to the closet. The closet door was a sliding door. When he opened the door, the scene that greeted him made Li Ziheng a little dumbfounded. His old face flushed, and he didn't take the clothes. He walked quickly towards the door. Get the clothes yourself. I'll go downstairs first. Leaving a sentence, Li Ziheng didn't look back, closed the door, and walked downstairs quickly. Creak. The bathroom door was pulled open, and Enya poked her head out, glanced around, and confirmed that Li Ziheng was not in the room before coming out of the bathroom. Her hair was wet, and she was wrapped in a pink bath towel, but the area covered by the bath towel was limited. Large areas of snow-white skin were exposed to the air. The white shoulders, delicate collarbone, slender and fair arms, and a pair of white, smooth, and extraordinarily long legs. Her skin was as soft as velvet, with a slight sheen. Like a work of art, it was mesmerizing. Walking slowly to the closet, looking at the open closet, Enya had a playful smile on her face. You've been married before? Why are you still so shy? In the closet, there were various styles of pajamas and nightgowns. Moreover, these pajamas and nightgowns were all semi-transparent styles, and there were even matching underwear inside the nightgowns. Those underwear styles were different, but they had one thing in common, that is, they were very skimpy, and there were even thong styles. Enya chose a relatively conservative one, put it on, and hummed a little tune as she walked out of the room. In the restaurant, Li Ziheng was eating noodles with his head down. Hearing footsteps from the hallway, he turned his head to look. Looking at the beautiful Enya, a trace of amazement flashed in Li Ziheng's eyes. But after just a simple glance, Li Ziheng continued to eat his noodles. Enya walked over, passing by Li Ziheng. In an instant, a faint but very pleasant smell of shower gel came over. It was unknown whether it was because the noodle soup was too hot or Li Ziheng's body temperature was too high, but his face turned red for a moment. Young master, I didn't expect you to be so good at cooking, and your noodles are so delicious. Enya praised without hesitation while eating the noodles. Li Ziheng didn't speak. After eating the noodles in a hurry, he got up and prepared to go upstairs. As if thinking of something, Li Ziheng suddenly stopped and said, Leave the dishes. I'll clean them up tomorrow morning. After saying that, he quickly went upstairs, and then the sound of a door closing was heard from the second floor. Enya, who was watching Li Ziheng go upstairs, tilted her head, but the smile on her lips couldn't be stopped. The domineering female CEO and her pure young master? This story seems quite interesting. Time flies like an arrow, and the days pass in the blink of an eye. The 2 days of the weekend quickly passed by. Monday, early morning, Li Ziheng and Enya left the house together, but they didn't go directly to the company. Before leaving, Li Ziheng had sent Jiang Wan a text message, reminding her not to forget to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize their divorce certificate. As soon as the text message was sent, the car suddenly stopped by the side of the road without warning. Li Ziheng turned his head, looking at Enya, who had already unfastened her seatbelt, with a puzzled expression. and you raised an eyebrow, signaling Li Ziheng to get out of the car. TCH, no sense of teamwork, get out of the car already. When Li Ziheng didn't respond, and you shot him a look of annoyance and then commented, young master, if you want the horse to run, you got to feed it first, right? Reluctantly, Li Ziheng had no choice but to get out of the car. And you had parked the car near a Sichuan-style noodle shop. As soon as they entered, Anya went to the cashier and ordered 2 bowls of beef noodles, one of which was extra spicy. Li Ziheng didn't think much of it. He assumed Anya liked spicy food. But when the 2 bowls of noodles were brought to the table, Anya pushed the spicy one toward Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng, slightly suspicious, asked, how did you know I like spicy food? I'm not blind. I noticed that even though you only put a little chili in the dishes these past few days, you always ate all of it. Anya replied nonchalantly and then started eating her noodles in small bites. Li Ziheng felt a warm sensation in his heart. He hadn't expected that Anya would notice his preference for spicy food, something Jiang had never noticed. Yet, Anya had observed and even remembered it. He had always loved spicy food, almost to the point of being unable to enjoy a meal without it. But since Jiang couldn't handle much spice, Li Ziheng usually avoided adding chili when cooking, unless it was essential for a dish. For 5 years, he had been accommodating Jiang in every way, taking care of her feelings. He often subconsciously ignored his own preferences, which led to Jiang complaining, saying that he never seemed to like anything. But who doesn't have their own likes and dislikes? It's just that sometimes they're hidden or suppressed for the sake of someone else. Li Ziheng didn't particularly like noodles, but the ones Anya chose from this noodle shop were so delicious that he finished the entire bowl of spicy beef noodles in one go. Huh, did you like the noodle shop I picked out? Anya had only eaten half of her noodles, leaving the other half. She didn't have room for more, but she finished the fried egg and beef in her bowl, which clearly showed that Anya liked eggs. Li Ziheng smiled and nodded. Yes, the taste is great. I really like it. At that moment, Anya pulled out 2 napkins from a paper box, extending one toward Li Ziheng. He instinctively reached for it, but Anya took the lead and used the napkin to wipe the oil stains off the corner of his mouth. The intimate gesture caught Li Ziheng by surprise. By the time he processed it, Anya had already retracted her hand. She propped her chin in both hands, a bright smile in her eyes, and stared at Li Ziheng intently. Li Ziheng, now aware of the situation, felt his face flush. Still, he maintained a calm demeanor and reminded her, don't do that again. It could be misunderstood. Misunderstood? What's there to misunderstand? You haven't been in a relationship yet, so if someone with bad intentions sees it and takes a picture, you might have a harder time finding someone in the future. That's exactly what I want. Anya's response left Li Ziheng speechless. He could see now that this high-end mighty female CEO, who was adored by many men in Yun City, was actually a total goofball when she wasn't in the office. Ding! The message alert went off. Li Ziheng took out his phone and opened the message. It was from Jiang, but the content of the message made Li Ziheng quite angry. Li Ziheng, you think you can just divorce me just like that? Why should you? Since you've been unfaithful to me, I want you to feel what it's like to be betrayed by your own wife. After reading the message, his previously good mood instantly soured. Jiang accused him of being unfaithful. But the one truly unfaithful was her, Jiang. Now that he was going to divorce her, she was turning things around and blaming him? What did that mean? Seeing Li Ziheng's face suddenly darken, Anya cautiously asked in a soft voice, has your ex-wife been bullying you again? Li Ziheng looked up at Anya, his eyes filled with confusion. Why do you think it's her bullying me? Young master, before you answer that, promise me you won't get angry, no matter what I say. Fine, I won't get angry. Go ahead. Young master, have you noticed that you kind of act like a little man? Anya's words left Li Ziheng silent. Thinking he had upset Li Ziheng, Anya hurriedly clarified, young master, don't misunderstand. I didn't mean little in that way. I meant little like a little woman. I didn't misunderstand. And you'd be better off not explaining. Li Ziheng's mood, which had been somewhat suppressed, was now lightened by Anya's explanation, though it was replaced by exasperation. How could the female CEO, who was revered as the goddess of Yun City, have such dirty thoughts in her head? Clear throat. Anya cleared her throat, and a rare blush appeared on her fair face. Young master, so are we still going to the Civil Affairs Bureau later? We don't need to go for now. Let's head to the company first. Li Ziheng shook his head, thought for a moment, and added, when you get a chance, help me prepare the divorce papers. I don't know much about it, so I'll have to trouble you. Got it, young master. Anya nodded, stood up, and paid for the meal. The two then got back in the car and headed straight for Yinhai Company. Because he had spent the past 2 days reviewing company client information, when a problem arose with one of the clients and someone needed to go communicate with them, Li Ziheng took the initiative to handle it. The business department manager was very pleased with Li Ziheng's proactive attitude. He patted Li Ziheng's shoulder, handed him the client's information, and reminded him, Ziheng, today's the client's birthday. They're celebrating at Starry Night Entertainment KTV at 4 p.m. I managed to get you a spot there. Go and make sure the client is satisfied. The issue is on our company's side, so your task is to calm them down and ensure we continue working with them. Li Ziheng nodded. Okay, I'll do my best to handle it. Great. Thank you for your hard work. The manager smiled and returned to his office. Li Ziheng flipped through the client's information. When he saw the client's name, he froze. Song Yi. How is it her? Li Ziheng frowned. Song Yi was Jiang Wan's best friend, an attractive and well-off woman. Her family ran a clothing business with 3 garment factories worth millions. 3 years ago, Song Yi had fallen out with Jiang Wan because of Li Ziheng. The reason was that one night, after drinking, Song Yi kissed Li Ziheng and tried to seduce him, but Li Ziheng rejected her. Afterward, Li Ziheng thought poorly of Song Yi's character and told Jiang Wan about it. Jiang Wan was furious and severed ties with Song Yi, never contacting her again. This task is going to be difficult. Li Ziheng rubbed his forehead, regretting taking the task. But now that it was already in his hands, he could only push forward. The workday passed quickly. Before Li Ziheng knew it, it was already 3:30 p.m. Because he needed to meet with Song Yi, the client, Li Ziheng had informed his manager ahead of time. After work, he took a taxi straight to the Starry Night Entertainment KTV. Following the message his manager had sent, Li Ziheng found the private room where Song Yi was. He knocked on the door, and as he entered, he immediately saw a few familiar faces. There were 8 people in the room, but Li Ziheng's gaze instantly locked onto Song Yi. Song Yi was wearing a tight-fitting white t-shirt and a pair of very short shorts. Her long wavy hair casually draped over her shoulders, and she wore delicate makeup. Compared to the naive girl she was 3 years ago, she now had a more mature aura. Song Yi was not unattractive. According to Jiang Wan, Song Yi had been the class beauty in their university class. Besides Song Yi, there were 7 other people. 3 of them Li Ziheng vaguely recognized. They should be her college classmates. The other 4 were strangers to him, probably friends she had made more recently. Li Ziheng, when Song Yi saw him walk in, she was momentarily stunned. It seemed she hadn't expected Li Ziheng to show up at her birthday party. Li Ziheng smiled and nodded, indicating the purpose of his visit. Miss Song, hello. I'm a sales representative from Yunhai. I came to discuss a potential collaboration with you. However, despite his lengthy explanation, it seemed Song Yi wasn't really paying attention. Her eyes flickered, and a mischievous smile tugged at her lips. So, you're working now? Does Jiang Wan know about this? Miss Birthday Star, it's your birthday party today. Can we put work aside for now? Let's just have some fun together, shall we? That's right, Miss Song. You're being too harsh. We came here specially to celebrate with you. You wouldn't ditch us to work, right? The sales guy is pretty handsome. How about introducing him? I've been single for a while now. The young men and women in the room began to tease Li Ziheng and joke around. Song Yi furrowed her brows and impatiently scolded. Everyone, shut up. Pause the music. As soon as she spoke, the room fell silent. Song Yi waved her hand at Li Ziheng, signaling for him to sit next to her. To complete his task, Li Ziheng could only nod and walk over. As soon as he sat down, Song Yi poured 3 glasses of alcohol, one with white liquor, one with red wine, and one with beer. She put down the bottles, her eyes gleaming with a hint of mockery. Today is my birthday. If you want to talk business, fine. But first, you need to drink 3 glasses to show your sincerity. The words were clear. Song Yi was deliberately making things difficult for him. Business is usually discussed over drinks. 3 glasses show sincerity. It's basic respect for the client. I don't think the sales guy has much work experience. Shouldn't he pour the drinks himself and toast you with 3 glasses? Handsome, if you want to talk business, you'd better drink up. After you've had your drinks, not only can we talk business, we can even talk about relationships. The young people in the room continued to tease and joke. Li Ziheng's face darkened, but for the sake of his work, he grit his teeth and picked up the beer, downing it in one go. Then came the red wine, followed by the white liquor. After the 3 drinks, Li Ziheng felt a burning sensation in his stomach. Drinking on an empty stomach, especially with 3 different types of alcohol, quickly started to take its toll. Within minutes, he began to feel dizzy. Seeing him finish the 3 drinks, the young men and women in the room cheered. Dude, not bad. Come on, let me toast you a drink. If you don't drink, you're disrespecting me. Handsome, his pride isn't worth much. After 3 drinks, his stomach must be hurting, right? Here, Have a grape to settle your stomach. Zhang Qian, what are you saying? If you want to flirt with the guy, don't step on my toes. Ha ha. The atmosphere in the room became even more lively. Facing all the teasing, Li Ziheng just smiled politely. At that moment, Song Yi picked a song on her phone and handed the microphone to Li Ziheng, asking him to duet with her. Li Ziheng instinctively wanted to refuse. After all, since being with Jiang Wan, he had never sung love songs with another woman. But thinking about the fact that he was about to divorce Jiang Wan, and more importantly, that he was there for work, he took the microphone. The song Song Yi had chosen was Today I'm Going to Marry You, the same song Li Ziheng had sung with Jiang Wan during their wedding ceremony. He knew the lyrics by heart, and as soon as he started singing, he stunned everyone in the room. Once the love song was finished, Li Ziheng felt a wave of dizziness. But the teasing didn't stop. As soon as the song ended, there were more toasts. Li Ziheng struggled to keep up, drinking one glass after another, until he was completely drunk. At this point, Song Yi leaned over and, under the pretense of discussing business, wrapped her arms around Li Ziheng's neck. Before he could react, she suddenly pushed him onto the sofa and kissed him aggressively. Click! The sound of a camera shutter snapped Li Ziheng out of his daze. He tried to resist, but Song Yi clung to him like an octopus, her arms locked around his neck. It was a forceful and invasive kiss, one that nearly left him gasping for air. The teasing voices around him didn't stop, and someone even recorded the kiss and marked the time. Li Ziheng wanted to get up and leave, but his head was throbbing, and his whole body felt limp as he sat back on the sofa. Song Yi sat beside him, her white, smooth legs crossed, her eyes gleaming with an unreadable expression. Li Ziheng, does this kiss feel familiar? Is it just like the one from 3 years ago? Song Yi's voice reached his ears, but before Li Ziheng could respond, a violent wave of dizziness washed over him, and he lost consciousness. Send me the videos of the duet and the kiss. Song Yi turned up the air conditioning a few degrees, and then asked her friends for the recorded video. Once she received the video, she had 2 guys help her carry Li Ziheng to her car, at the KTV building downstairs. Tonight, all the bills are on me. Enjoy yourselves. I'll excuse myself. Bye. Song Yi waved at the 2 guys before getting into the driver's seat. Soon, the car drove off into the distance. Damn, she's forsaking her friends for a guy, one of the guys complained. The other guy, however, smiled with a bit of schadenfreude. He had known both Song Yi and Jiang Wan since college. Though he didn't know exactly why they had fallen out 3 years ago, seeing Song Yi kiss Jiang Wan's husband in public and then take him away was definitely surprising. But he had no intention of telling Jiang Wan. Instead, he was looking forward to the drama that would follow. Half an hour later, at Song Yi's private apartment, looking at Li Ziheng, who was lying naked on the bed, Song Yi decisively climbed on top of him and took several intimate photos. She then sent the photos and the videos of their duet and kiss to Jiang Wan. At the same time, she intertwined her fingers with Li Ziheng's, took a photo, and edited the caption for a post on her social media. Once I set my sights on a man, I always get him. As soon as she posted it, several likes and comments poured in. Ding, ding, ding. The message alerts kept ringing. One was from her best friend, joking about her abandoning her friends for the handsome guy. The rest, of course, were from Jiang Wan. Song Yi excitedly opened the messages. Jiang Wan's messages were filled with fury, but Song Yi didn't get angry. In fact, she felt a sense of vengeful satisfaction. Her fingers quickly tapped on the screen, and after composing a reply, she hit send. Sorry, your husband is too wild. I couldn't reply to your messages. We'll talk tomorrow. City Center. A spacious 3-bedroom apartment. This was the marital home of Li Ziheng and Jiang Wan, where the couple had lived together for 5 years. But now, inside the bedroom of their home, Jiang Wan had destroyed everything she could get her hands on. Li Ziheng, you bastard. How could you cheat on me? Jiang Wan's eyes were red, and tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheeks. She muttered repeatedly to herself, but at the same time, she threw objects around, venting her anger. She harbored hatred for Li Ziheng, but at the same time, there was still love. After 5 years of living together, how could she not have feelings for him? When Li Ziheng proposed a divorce, her heart ached, but she firmly believed that without her, his life would be miserable. After all, the money Li Ziheng gave as the dowry had gone to her parents. Without money or her to shield him from life's difficulties, his life would be unbearable. Thus, she was certain that Li Ziheng would regret it. He would apologize, admit his wrongs, and eventually return to her. But she never imagined that not only would Li Ziheng not apologize, but he was also now entangled with her former best friend, Song Yi. The more she thought about it, the more painful it became. Jiangwan quickly changed clothes and rushed out the door. After leaving the house, she first drove to the place where Song Yi used to live. As her former best friend, Jiangwan knew Song Yi's address. However, to her disappointment, Song Yi had sold her old place, and Jiangwan had no idea where she lived now. After spending an hour, she managed to contact nearly all of their former college friends and finally learned where Song Yi currently resided. On her way to Song Yi's place, a sudden thunderclap echoed through the sky, and the rain began to pour down heavily. In the midst of the rainy night, Jiangwan drove in distress. Thinking of Li Ziheng now being with Song Yi, she felt suffocated. She sped up and within 10 minutes arrived at Song Yi's neighborhood. A few minutes later, she was drenched and standing in front of Song Yi's door. Ding dong, ding dong. The doorbell rang repeatedly. Song Yi, already asleep, was woken by the noise. With sleepy eyes and her clothes half-dressed, she climbed out of bed. She walked out of her room and opened the door. Seeing Jiangwan standing there, Song Yi froze for a moment. After a brief pause, a mocking smile spread across Song Yi's face. You came so quickly? Jiangwan's eyes were bloodshot, and her face was filled with rage, like an angry lion. Slap! She slapped Song Yi hard across the face, her eyes filled with hatred. Song Yi, Li Ziheng is my husband. How could you do something so shameless and vile? Song Yi was stunned by the unexpected slap. She covered her face and stood there for a moment before reacting. Her face darkened, and she lunged at Jiangwan. What's wrong with your husband? You clearly don't love him, do you? If you didn't love him, why tie him down? Song Yi's words immediately reminded Jiangwan of 5 years ago. 5 years ago, Cheng Hao had left her and gone abroad for further studies. Unable to handle the pain of a breakup, she sat crying on the side of the road, where she met Li Ziheng. Then Li Ziheng began to pursue her. At first, she had no intention of agreeing, but later, a friend suggested that the fastest way to get over a relationship was to enter a new one. So Jiangwan agreed to become Li Ziheng's girlfriend, and she remembered how happy he was when she said yes, like a child who had just received candy. Slap! Song Yi slapped her back. She also mocked her coldly. Jiangwan, let me tell you, I liked Li Ziheng 5 years ago. I always wanted to chase after him, but it was because of you that he kept rejecting me. Now Cheng Hao is back, and has even joined your company. You already have Cheng Hao, so why are you still holding on to Li Ziheng's love? If you don't love him, why are you so selfish? Why won't you just let me and Li Ziheng be together? The two women fought fiercely, not noticing that someone else had appeared behind the door. Li Ziheng had been awake since hearing the doorbell. Not knowing how to face Song Yi, he chose to pretend to be asleep. But the commotion at the door drew his attention, and so he braced himself and stepped outside. Because of the angle, Song Yi didn't notice him, but Jiangwan saw him immediately. Li Ziheng, at the moment she saw him, her heart skipped a beat, and her movements froze. Her expression stiffened. Song Yi, too, stopped and turned toward the door, her eyes lighting up when she saw Li Ziheng standing there. She immediately walked over to him, wrapping her arms around his waist in an affectionate manner. Her voice was soft and tender as she asked, "Baby, are you awake? Sorry, did we wake you up?" If this had happened before, Li Ziheng would have immediately pushed her away and reminded her that he was Jiangwan's husband, asking her to respect boundaries. But this time he didn't push her away. Li Ziheng's gaze was dark and unreadable as he stared directly at Jiangwan. What Song Yi said just now, is it true? Ah! Jiangwan opened her mouth, but couldn't find the words to answer. Song Yi's words were the truth, and she couldn't deny it, but... Li Ziheng smiled, but the smile was bitter, tinged with self-mockery. Jiangwan, it's over between us. You don't want a divorce? Fine, I've already filed for it. Now, please leave. Don't disturb us. Upon hearing this, Song Yi beamed with joy, turning to Jiangwan and arrogantly shouting, "Did you hear that? Ziheng said for you to stop bothering us, so hurry up and leave." Jiangwan's face turned pale, as though she were about to shatter. Her eyes red, she stubbornly stared at Li Ziheng and asked, "Li Ziheng, are you really with her? Does it matter to you?" Li Ziheng's expression was cold. He had thought that even if Jiangwan's feelings had changed, at least she had once loved him. But the reality was, from the very beginning, Jiangwan had never been with him because she loved him. Looking back now, it seemed laughable. He had been nothing but a stand-in for Cheng Hao for 5 years. No wonder after Cheng Hao returned, Jiangwan started avoiding home, avoiding spending time with him. From the start, he had always been the disgraceful third party. Back then, Cheng Hao had once said on the phone, The one who isn't loved is the third wheel. At the time, Li Ziheng had proudly refuted him, angered. Now looking back, it was truly absurd. Staring at the indifferent Li Ziheng, Jiang Wan felt a deep sense of injustice. But when she saw Song Yi's smug and mocking expression, her anger flared up. She bit her lip and spoke in a suddenly strong tone. Li Ziheng, is this your way of getting back at me? Li Ziheng did not respond or explain. At this point, what was the point of explaining? Seeing Li Ziheng's silence, Jiang Wan clenched her teeth, growling. Li Ziheng, I will make you regret this. I swear. With that, she turned and stormed off. After Jiang Wan left, Li Ziheng tried to push away the still clinging Song Yi. But Song Yi seemed like a stubborn gum, sticking to him as soon as he pushed her away. Li Ziheng sighed helplessly. She's already gone. There's no need to keep acting. Hearing this, Song Yi froze for a moment, then lifted her head, looking at Li Ziheng with burning intensity. She said seriously, You think I was acting just now? Li Ziheng replied with certainty. What else could it be? We've barely spent any time together. You can't possibly be in love with me. At most, it's just a crush. Do you believe in love at first sight? Song Yi's gaze softened. She casually closed the door, then pushed Li Ziheng hard against the wall. Li Ziheng resisted, but due to the lingering effects of alcohol, he felt a bit weak and powerless. Song Yi's fiery gaze was fixed on his eyes. The moment I saw you, I was already moved, but because of Jiang Wan, I didn't dare to show it. Later, when the three of us were together, I would intentionally get closer to you. But you always kept your distance from me, which made me so angry. 3 years ago, I was drunk, so I couldn't hold back and kissed you. But I don't regret it, even though it caused a rift between me and Jiang Wan, at least. I kissed you. Even though you blocked me afterward and gave me no chance to get close to you, I still don't regret it. With that, Song Yi once again attempted to kiss Li Ziheng. But Li Ziheng turned his head, not allowing her to succeed. Song Yi, with more strength, grabbed his neck and forcefully turned his head back, then whispered, Li Ziheng, you should know that I've practiced karate before. Be good, or I won't hesitate to use force. Saying that, she kissed him without any hesitation. Her kiss was as domineering as ever. Li Ziheng gritted his teeth, making one last attempt to resist, but Song Yi's hand tightened around his neck. Suddenly, she applied more pressure. Li Ziheng groaned in pain, and it was that groan that gave Song Yi the chance to deepen the kiss. After a long while, their lips finally parted. Li Ziheng rubbed his temples, gasping for air. Across from him, Song Yi was smiling brightly, her eyes full of triumph. Li Ziheng, it's been 3 years, and I still can't get over you, but I never thought of actively looking for you. This time, you came to me on your own. Since you've come to me, I won't let you go this time. Song Yi's smile was laced with heat as she looked at him, her voice low and filled with desire. You are mine. The next day, as dawn broke, Li Ziheng hurriedly escaped from Song Yi's house. Last night, he had forced himself to sit in the living room of Song Yi's house all night. It wasn't that he didn't want to escape immediately, but Song Yi was too crazy. No matter where he went, she followed him. He tried to leave, but Song Yi blocked the door, telling him he could leave, but only after sunrise. In her words, if he left now, Jiang Wan might be waiting downstairs. Li Ziheng had no choice but to stay. But even though he was tired and uncomfortable, he didn't plan to sleep, because he suspected that once he fell asleep, Song Yi, this crazy woman, might do something even crazier. Fortunately, when morning came, Song Yi didn't stop him and let him leave. After leaving Song Yi's house, Li Ziheng flagged down a taxi at the entrance of the neighborhood and headed back to the Binjiang villa. Once in the car, he took out his phone, only to find that it had somehow been turned off. He thought the battery had died, but after trying to turn it on, he saw that it still had 50% battery left. As soon as the phone turned on, a flood of missed calls, text messages, and instant messages came pouring in. Li Ziheng, exhausted and with a pounding headache, had no desire to go through them. He just stuffed the phone back into his pocket. What he didn't know was that when he left, someone in a black car across the street from the neighborhood had been watching everything. Those bloodshot eyes had been watching him closely, not missing a single moment. Li Ziheng, you really did cheat. A hoarse voice rang out. It was Jiang Wan. After leaving last night, she had been waiting in the car all night. She waited until dawn to see Li Ziheng finally leave the neighborhood. Last night, when Li Ziheng had stayed at Song Yi's place, she had no doubt that something had happened between them. At that moment, her phone rang. The caller ID clearly showed the name Cheng Hao. Without thinking, Jiang Wan pressed the answer button. Wan, I've settled things at home. I'll be in Yun City at 10 a.m. today. Are you free? Would you mind picking me up? Of course I'm free. Great, Warner. I've got some good news for you. I'll tell you when we meet. Okay. I'll pick you up at 10. All right. I'll be waiting for you. After hanging up the phone, Jiangwan thought for a moment before deciding to go home first. She had been drenched in rain last night, and she looked particularly disheveled. She didn't want Chung Hao to see her in such a state. After taking a hot shower and setting an alarm, she rested for 2 hours before leaving to drive straight to the airport. Meanwhile, Li Ziheng had returned to the Binjiang villa. As soon as he stepped inside, he was immediately scolded by Anya. Hey, young master, you know how to come home, huh? I was about to call the police if you didn't come back. Anya's delicate face was smiling, but the smile gave Li Ziheng an eerie feeling. Li Ziheng awkwardly smiled and explained, I drank too much last night. Anya raised an eyebrow, asking, Drank too much? With who? Did someone take advantage of you? Just a business partner. It was their birthday yesterday, so... Li Ziheng patiently explained, then added, Are you overthinking this? I'm a man. How could someone take advantage of me? Upon hearing this, Anya secretly sighed in relief but still said aloud, Young master, there are many bad women out there. They'll only take advantage of you. Only I'm truly good to you. Li Ziheng shot Anya a speechless look, then changed into his slippers and walked past her towards the hallway. Anya stood up. Young master, you look a bit unwell. How about taking the day off? No need. I'll just rest for a bit, Li Ziheng rejected. Without turning back, he went upstairs. As she watched his figure disappear into the hallway, Anya sniffed, her brow furrowing as she muttered to herself. Why does young master smell like women's perfume? Damn it, who is it? Who dared to seduce my pure young master? Anya puffed her cheeks, feeling furious. After a moment of hesitation, she decided to march upstairs to find out what was going on with Li Ziheng. Li Ziheng's door wasn't locked. Not only the bedroom door, but even the glass door to the bathroom was unlocked. So, when Anya stormed into the bathroom to ask why Li Ziheng smelled like women's perfume, Li Ziheng was so shocked his face turned pale. Li Ziheng awkwardly covered his lower body, glaring at Anya. Anya, what the hell are you doing? Can't you see I'm in the middle of taking a shower? Stop being so angry. I've already seen everything, Anya said, feeling guilty. She pouted, glanced at Li Ziheng for a moment, then stormed out of the bathroom in frustration. 2.5 hours later, Li Ziheng, with a dark face, came downstairs and, along with Anya, went to Yunhai Corporation. Soon, the car stopped in the parking lot beneath the building, and Li Ziheng insisted that Anya enter the company first, while he waited for 5 minutes before going in after her. The reason for this was mainly to avoid causing unnecessary trouble or rumors. After all, when he officially joined the business department, some curious colleagues had already asked him about his relationship with Anya. At the time, Li Ziheng answered that they were just friends and that it was thanks to Anya's help that he had gotten the job. None of his colleagues had doubted him, because his resume showed no work experience, and a big company like Yunhai wouldn't hire someone without any experience. Ziheng, you're quite something. The young lady from the Song family is notorious for being difficult. But you only went to see her yesterday, and you got her to comply. As soon as he sat at his desk, the manager of the business department came over to greet him and praised him generously. The colleagues in his group also cast surprised glances at him. Just lucky. Li Ziheng smiled and nodded, but inside, he was bitterly laughing. For this task, he had been forcefully kissed by Song Yi for the second time, and he had even been stripped naked. He had almost lost himself. Memories of the past flooded his mind. His ex-wife, Jiang Wan, had severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. Even after marriage, the most they ever did was hold hands or share a simple hug. There was no further intimate contact. His first kiss had been forcibly taken by Song Yi 3 years ago. This was why Jiang Wan had become furious and had severed ties with Song Yi. The second kiss had also been with Song Yi, and again, it was forced. It was quite laughable when he thought about it. After chatting briefly with the manager, Li Ziheng buried himself in his work, which wasn't heavy, just sorting through some client information. At Yun City Airport, Jiang Wan, looking somewhat tired with noticeable bloodshot eyes, stood at the exit, staring blankly ahead. Her mind was still replaying everything that had happened the previous night. Thinking about how Li Ziheng had betrayed her and spent the night with Song Yi, she felt a wave of frustration. It was like having her favorite toy taken away by someone else, and it was impossible for her to accept. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Chung Hao approaching her. Chung Hao naturally placed his hand on her pale forehead. You don't look well. Are you sick? Chung Hao's concerned voice broke her reverie. Jiang Wan jumped back in surprise, and only when she saw that it was Chung Hao did she relax. She forced a smile. I'm fine. Just had a sleepless night and didn't rest well. Chung Hao asked, Is it because of the company matters? Kind of. Jiangwan didn't want to talk about Li Ziheng, so she casually nodded. Don't worry. I told you I'd help, and I will. The reason I came back was partly to deal with some family matters. After a pause, Chung Hao smiled, and then continued, but another reason was to ask my uncle for help. ML. Jiangwan frowned slightly, intrigued by what Chung Hao said. My uncle works in real estate, and he's planning to invest in other industries soon. So, I went to him to see if he could invest in Jiang Corporation. Jiangwan's brow furrowed deeper. Jiang Corporation needs partners in business, not investment. And Jiang Corporation has plenty of capital. Warner, has the lack of rest slowed your thinking? Chung Hao raised his hand, as if to ruffle her head. Jiangwan stiffened and almost avoided it, but reconsidered when she thought about what Li Ziheng had done. My uncle has some connections in Tianhai City, but to ask him for business help, we'd need a good reason, right? Chung Hao ruffled her hair, giving her a pampering look. At first, I thought of an idea. I could tell my uncle that you're my girlfriend. As he spoke, Chung Hao's gaze fixed on Jiangwan's eyes. Jiangwan was about to reject the idea, but Chung Hao suddenly gave a self-deprecating smile and continued. But then I thought about it, and it doesn't feel right. After all, you and Li Ziheng aren't divorced yet. If I do this, it might seem like I'm stealing you away, like the third party. If my uncle finds out I'm doing this, wouldn't he be furious and disown me? Chung Hao made a funny, scared expression, which made Jiangwan involuntarily laugh. Although I don't mind getting a beating for you after thinking about it, you're still married to Li Ziheng. If my uncle wants to meet you and finds out about this, he'll definitely say some unpleasant things. Chung Hao sighed deeply, a bitter smile on his face, as he looked at Jiangwan with a complex expression. I don't mind the beating, but I don't want you to get hurt. Thank you. Jiangwan felt touched by Chung Hao's earnest affection. Her cheeks flushed as she lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. No need to thank me. I promised I would be there for you. And I, Chung Hao, always keep my word. Chung Hao's voice was firm. Jiangwan felt warmth in her heart. Later, Jiangwan drove Chung Hao to a high-end restaurant to welcome him back, and the two of them chatted happily. Chung Hao also shared some of his plans. His plan was simple. For Jiangwan to transfer some shares of Jiang Corporation to Chung Hao's uncle at market price, making him a shareholder. No way, my father won't agree to that. Jiangwan's expression changed, and she firmly rejected the idea. The biggest advantage of Jiang Corporation's success was that her father made all the decisions by himself. There was no need to discuss decisions with shareholders. As her father, Jiang Haisheng, often said, the company only needed one voice, and that voice was his as the chairman. Warner, don't get upset. Let me finish first. Chung Hao seemed to have anticipated her rejection. He smiled confidently and said, even if my uncle invests, Jiang Corporation will still only have one voice. Don't forget, my uncle has his own business, and he won't come to Yun City. Although part of the shares will be in his name, everything here in Yun City will still be under my control. Whatever decisions your father makes, I won't interfere with or oppose. But, even though Chung Hao said this, Jiangwan still felt uneasy. Moreover, knowing her father, she was sure he wouldn't agree. Warner, don't you trust me? Chung Hao seemed to grow impatient. Jiangwan fell silent. Chung Hao gritted his teeth, feigning disappointment, and then said, I've already talked to my uncle. If Jiang Corporation is willing to transfer the shares, he can help connect you with people. He has many friends in the pharmaceutical industry, and for him, it's just a matter of making a phone call. Also, this is a great opportunity for Jiang Corporation to enter Tianhai City. The market there is as good as Yun City's, and you should know that if everything goes well, Jiang Corporation could even set up a branch there. Chung Hao's vision for Jiang Corporation's future made Jiangwan a bit tempted. After thinking for a moment, Jiangwan nodded lightly and said, I can't answer you right now. I need to go back and discuss it with my father. He'll have the final say. Okay, I understand. I just wanted to help, but whether it works out or not isn't up to me. Chung Hao smiled casually. Chung Hao, thank you. Jiangwan felt grateful. During Jiang Corporation's most difficult time, Li Ziheng was busy with Song Yi, but Chung Hao was the only one who genuinely helped her. Noon, Li Ziheng went to the cafeteria with his colleagues from the business department. After 2 days of interaction, he had already gotten familiar with the colleagues in his department. Li Ziheng, you're something else. I've met that spoiled young lady from the Song family, and her temper is notoriously bad. I never thought you'd be able to handle her after just one encounter. Li Ziheng is pretty handsome. Could it be that the Song family's young lady took a fancy to him? Or did Li Ziheng use his charm? Damn, that's possible. Li Ziheng, you wouldn't have already won over the Song family's young lady, would you? I also want a rich young lady as my girlfriend. I'd love to be spoiled. Li Ziheng, teach me how to do it. Don't make me beg you. Look at you, you pathetic guy. If you have the guts, kneel. If you don't, I'll lose respect for you. The colleagues at the same table teased each other, but there was no ill intent. Li Ziheng just smiled, explaining that he was simply lucky and that he had been heavily drunk last night while completing the task and had even blacked out. The chatter among his colleagues continued, and the atmosphere was lively and harmonious. Whoa, why is General Manager in here in the cafeteria? At this point, one of the more talkative male colleagues sitting opposite Li Ziheng suddenly widened his eyes and stared behind Li Ziheng. The other colleagues quickly followed his gaze. They saw Anya walking over, holding a tray of food. As soon as they saw her, all of them went silent. But everyone's gaze was fixed on the graceful Anya as she walked toward them. Anya was dressed in a professional suit, a fitted blazer, a white shirt underneath, and a black pencil skirt, paired with high heels. Her tall figure stood out, and her long legs swayed as she walked, drawing attention from everyone around her. Many male colleagues couldn't help but swallow as they watched. Anya walked to Li Ziheng's table, surveyed the seats, and smiled lightly, asking, "Is there a seat?" The table was rectangular, enough for 10 people, which was exactly the number of people in Li Ziheng's group. Clearly, there was no seat, but Anya asked on purpose. Her colleagues weren't stupid. They knew what she meant in a second. "General Manager, and I've just finished eating. You can sit." The talkative male colleague sitting opposite Li Ziheng immediately stood up to give up his seat. Though he claimed he had just finished eating, his plate was barely a third empty. "Thank you." Anya nodded with a smile and sat down gracefully. After a moment's thought, she turned to the man who was about to leave and said, "Starting this month, I'll raise your base salary by 1,000. "Thank you, General Manager, and thank you." The male colleague, delighted, thanked her repeatedly. He had only given up his seat, but a $1,000 increase in his base salary was a huge deal. That was $12,000 extra a year. What a good deal. The other colleagues watched this in envy, their eyes turning green with jealousy. Damn capitalists. Always doing these things to humiliate. After Anya sat down, the previously lively chatter around the table went quiet. Though she was a beautiful CEO, her powerful aura also made the atmosphere tense. With the CEO at the same table, everyone felt immense pressure. Within a few minutes, the colleagues quickly finished their meals, stood up, and left. Soon, the 10-person table was left with just Li Ziheng and Anya. With no one else around, Anya relaxed and started a conversation with Li Ziheng. "So, how's the food? Is it to your taste?" "It's okay," Li Ziheng replied simply, his head down as he continued eating. Anya frowned, looking somewhat displeased. "Do you have to be so cold? I just exposed myself to you. What's wrong?" "Shut up." Li Ziheng's face flushed. He looked around nervously. Although their group was the only one left at this table, the cafeteria was huge, and it wasn't just the 10 people from their group. Sure enough, after a quick scan, Li Ziheng realized almost 90% of the people in the cafeteria were sneaking glances at him and Anya. The feeling made him uncomfortable. Anya smiled wickedly, her gaze burning as she stared at him. "If you want me to shut up, then you'd better have lunch with me in the future. Either I come to the cafeteria with you, or you join me in the CEO's office for lunch. Are you threatening me?" Li Ziheng frowned slightly, looking at Anya in annoyance. "In your eyes, am I the kind of woman who would threaten people?" Anya's face darkened, a hurt expression crossing her delicate features. She lowered her head, poking at the braised pork in her plate with her chopsticks, and muttered, "Actually, eating alone is really lonely. I'm not like you, surrounded by colleagues. I have to eat alone and leave alone after work. I want to get along with my colleagues too, but I'm the CEO. If I get too close to my subordinates, I'll lose my authority." At this point, Anya suddenly bit her lip, looking even more aggrieved. "Forget it. I'm just a high-ranking worker. No one loves me. No one cares. It's normal. I'm sorry for disturbing you today, young master. I won't bother you again." Her eyes reddened, and she stood up, preparing to leave. Li Ziheng's heart softened. He quietly said, "Sit down and eat. I'll accompany you from now on." "Really?" The moment the words left his mouth, Anya's eyes immediately lit up, and she stopped pretending to be upset. Li Ziheng had a strange feeling that he had been played. Was all that previous act of hers just a show? "You really are a considerate man, young master." Anya beamed with joy, and while eating, she asked, "Young master, what kind of dishes would you like tomorrow? I'll have my secretary order them." "Anything," Li Ziheng responded absent-mindedly. Anya pouted and said, "Young master, don't be so cold. I saw you laughing and chatting with the other colleagues. Why are you so serious with me? Don't tell me you think I tricked you into giving me money." Li Ziheng rolled his eyes and responded in a bad mood. "You didn't trick me out of money, but you definitely tricked me into feeling sorry for you." "I didn't. Do I look like the type of woman who would trick someone for sympathy?" "Young master, your judgment is way off." Li Ziheng said seriously. You're not like that, you are like that. He. Anya suddenly laughed. All right, you win, but you already promised, and a man's word is his bond. You better not go back on it. Ding. Just then, Li Ziheng's phone rang. It was a text message. He pulled out his phone to check. The message was from Song Yi, and the content immediately made Li Ziheng's head throb. Baby, I'm already yours. Hurry up and take me off your blacklist. Otherwise, in 10 months, I'll bring the kid to you for a paternity test.